Committee will come to order. Will Commissioners, staff, and guests please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Limited public comment. At this time, any member of the public wishing to address the committee may do so for up to 3 minutes. Please note that we will have a special public comment period during the ARPA deliberation section of the meeting. Good morning.
Good morning. Alvin Schallenbarger, Hastings. There's a saying that the early bird gets the worm, but the mouse gets a second cheese. And I'm not being stand for the whole meeting, but this is in regard to the ARPA fund again. Kent County, I seen Sunday on the news in the morning, they're having the same issues about the government wanting to take the ARPA funds away from them because they're not spending it right, and because they're not 4.26 million supposed to be spent for the homeless and the to deal with housing and housing issues in Grand Rapids. And they said that the federal government's already threatened to take their whole entire ARPA money away. And I would bring it to this council attention that you guys better make sure that you're doing the right thing, because the taxpayers is ultimately going to be the one on the hook for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further public comment?
We had our annual dinner on Saturday. And
Commissioner Getty, do you want to come up? We have a
special. Was not able to attend, so we would like to present her with the Chamber Champion Award for all she does for the community, and she is on basically all of our committees.
She's been on here 11 months. Where's ours? Congratulations, Commissioner. Well deserved.
Thank you.
And thank you for bringing that up here. Is there further public comment?
Joel Ibbotson, Rutland Township. Something that I wanted to address, wasn't able to while Mr. Haney was here. Just recently, this is on the Detroit News, report COVID deaths in long-term care facilities underreported by nearly 30%. And Michigan has been a national news sensation because of the nursing home fatalities through COVID. And one person that I don't think gets nearly enough recognition for being the complete opposite of what's happened throughout the entire state is the way that Mr. Haney has handled the nursing home crisis. I don't know what the report is as of today, but I know that deep into the pandemic, where we had lost tens of thousands of other people, we had lost 0. So I think that everyone needs to take their hat off to the way that he has run that organization over there, because he has literally saved dozens, if not maybe even 100 lives by the way that he's done that. So if we all would, let's have some gratitude and some thanks for the way that he ran that. And I wish he was here. I'd tell it to him to his face. Thank you.
Thank you. Agreed. Further public comment. Come on up, Gary.
Good morning, Gary White, Nashville. At your last meeting, you got reference about the night meetings. Those commissioners had an idea, they tried it. I think where they failed is that they were moving the night meetings around the county in different areas. But they did try. Maybe this county should try 1 cow meeting a month and 2 board meetings, or vice versa, and leave the third Tuesday open. There is more to this thought, but there's not enough time to go over it all here. Thornapple Manor has huge staff needs, and did not sound like the commissioners are very worried about it. Only who would get preference in the building? Well, if you have no staff, you don't have to worry about who gets preference in the building. I was really surprised at the number they're down right now, plus the number that they need. Health Board, Health Department wants 20 new vehicles. And I'm not against them having some vehicles, but I'm not sure I like the way they were presented it. They need 7 staff members. Their requested cost for redesign and furnishings for the Eaton County facility. Commissioner Jackson at that meeting stated the health board, or at the health board meeting, Berry County for $450,000 gets $7 million. The health department gets $7 million, which is split. So Berry County is not receiving that. They get part of it. The health department, we need to find out what that split is. As Commissioners Campbell and Getty take your new positions on the board, maybe you can get down to the money split of the services of the 2 counties. ARPA funds. It appears that some have their foot on the gas pedal to the floor. The rest are being told there is no brick wall in front of them. Don't worry, just spend the money. Looking at the manor and health department needs, and then throw in the county parks, which should have been a priority for the county. Should the county be doling out these funds to all the projects before they take care of their own needs in-house? On the water towers, do these entities have water capital improvement funds for the future needs? Is there a base rate which pays off debt? And if not, if they have no debt, should they be getting this money, or should they be putting more money into it? There's never enough money to go around. This needs to be spent wisely, not quickly. Now the decision has been made to spend the money. People have public comments. Doesn't mean they're verbal attacks, although it was stated that way with my name in the paper last Thursday. I don't think that was appropriate, but that's what happens with the press. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further public comment? Hearing none, we'll move ahead. We'll move ahead to interviews for the Parks and Recreation Commission. We have 2 openings for the board, and we have 2 applicants. So if we could have Douglas Klein and Sarah Price come forward. You both have a seat up here.
Ben. Sarah's not here.
Sarah withdrew. It's just you, Doug.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Doug Klein from Hastings Township.
Yeah, we'll begin by giving you the floor to make an introductory statement, state why you reapplied for this board and what you would like to do to enhance Berry County parks. Then we'll go into questions from commissioners. So,
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I've served on the board for a couple of years now, and prior to that on the Berry County Parks and Recreation Board back when we were separated from the Charlton Park Board. So I've got about 4 years' experience. In that time, we've established the Thornapple Birding Trail here in the county, and we've also established a Berry County Parks Foundation to try and obtain some funds from the private sector to help support the growth of our parks here. So I think we've accomplished some good things in the past and look forward to doing more in the future. I look forward to serving on this committee to help grow our parks system in this county here and increase the opportunities for our citizens to recreate in the outdoors, enjoy the great outdoors. I think we're uniquely situated between larger counties to the north and west and south and so forth, so we can serve as the recreational go-to location for roughly 1 million people. I think we have a great opportunity to grow our park system here, and I look forward to being part of that.
Thank you. We're going to go into questions from commissioners. We're going to start with the award-winning and heralded Commissioner Catherine Getty, who sits on the Parks and Recreation Commission. Commissioner.
That'll be the last time, right?
No. She does bring a lot of experience and energy to the board. So, floor is yours.
That's what I was going to say about Doug. He's been a working member of our board. He talked about the birding trail establishment in Berry County.
If we could have a little quiet in the hallway, please. Thank you.
Thanks.
Continue, Commissioner.
I completely support Doug's reappointment to this board. If he was not to be reappointed, he would definitely leave a hole in how things get accomplished.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Campbell.
I'm over here behind the pole. How you doing? I'm just kind of curious as what are some of the projects that are currently working on right now as a Parks Commission? What have we got going on?
Probably one of our primary
Future
projects is working on the Thornapple Trail, getting that completed, and paving sections as funds become available. We had also looked at, we had a cost estimate done for adding a small campground to Charlton Park. We don't have the funds for that right yet, but at least we know roughly what kind of monies we're talking about. And then we have also we have a wonderful river that runs through our county. It's difficult to canoe and kayak on parts of that river because of woody debris that's in there, so we need to establish a river trail that has some sort of mechanism for keeping the trail navigable so that people can, go down it and not have to get jumping over trees every 20 feet or whatever as they fall.
If we fall, I mean,
Yes.
we're pretty nimble and agile.
Okay, yeah. So, and then there's also the, future acquisition of other parks. I mean, we have 2 county parks here in Barry. When you look at Kent, they've got 38 county parks. Ottawa County has 39 county parks. Each of those counties have like 4 or 5 complete trail systems that are paved and done and people using them every day. So we've got a little bit of catch-up work to do. It all takes money, of course. So that's, the sticking point, but at least we have some vision and some plans for knowing what we want to do.
Sounds good. I appreciate that, and also all the time that you dedicate to the county.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson.
No questions. Appreciate your 4 years of service to the Parks and Rec. There's been some great improvements, and I know there's some vision to move forward with that. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Vice Chair Connor.
Thank you. Thank you so much for reapplying and.
Muted.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for your service, and thank you for reapplying and wanting to continue to move forward with the Parks and Rec progress. I thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Gibson
No questions. Thanks for applying.
and Commissioner Smelker.
Thank you for applying. Thank you also for applying, and I have noticed since COVID and stuff, and maybe before that, that the trails and the parks are being used a lot more.
Yes.
And thank you for what you do.
You're most welcome.
I have no questions. I can say that the Parks and Rec system in Berry County has been really enhanced over the last 10 years, and a lot of that is because of your leadership and your expertise. So, at this time, the Chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners reappointment of Douglas Klein to fill a citizen-at-large position on the Parks and Recreation Board for a 3-year term that began on January 1st, 2022 and expires on December 31st, 2024.
So moved.
Second?
Motion is made by Getty, supported by Connor. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you very much.
All right, we're going to move ahead to the Commission on Aging Board. We have 4 vacancies, and we have 5 applicants here. Another applicant has decided to interview next week. A little discussion on why we broke this up. Mr. Mattson, who serves on 2 other boards, really wanted to be here in person to interview, but Luella, why was he had a issue? He wasn't able to?
Oh, yes, he had a conflict today.
My thought is anybody that serves on 2 county boards and wants another one, we need to see if this person is well, and interviewing them in person. So what are the board's wishes? Would we like to make a decision on this? He's a great guy, serves with distinction. Would we like to interview Mr. Mattson next week and make a decision, or would you like to waive his interview?
Oh, I'm happy.
Okay.
I can do it. I mean, what
Great.
does other people think? They're good?
We can interview him next week.
Next
All
week's
right.
fine.
So we're going to start interviews with the 2 incumbents. Could we have Don Bowers and Sally Schuster-Schoff come up? Sally Schuster-Schoff, who comes all the way from sunny Florida, who traveled here just to make it for the COA interview.
I have a very understanding husband. Wouldn't let me fly, so he drove me.
So the way we're going to do this is we're going to interview our two incumbents first, and then we're going to interview our additional applicants. We'll give you both a moment to tell us about yourself, tell us why you reapplied, and what you would like to do to enhance services for seniors in Berry County. We will start with the legendary Mr. Bowers.
Yes.
Please introduce yourself and explain why you would like to serve on the board.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, well, I didn't hear you.
Why would you like to serve on the board?
Well, I've been given such a warm reception for the city and county and Berry County and the city of Hastings. I'm at the age where I think I can add some stuff to that if people will listen to me. I want to give back because of all the things I think Hastings has given me. And I think one of the things with the board is I think that the name of the organization should be changed. I think it's a holdback from some of the senior citizens. When you say Commission on Aging, it sounds like it's something, if you, a senior center or something like that I think would be much better. And we get more people to come into the area and to talk with us and do things. And there's other things that we need to do, such as other avenues to look at for the senior citizens, for them taking places, doing things other than what we have been. And that's basically why I'm here.
All right. Sally, if you'd like to take the microphone. Why have you decided to reapply to the Commission on Aging?
We're
And
not
introduce
done.
yourself, too.
Sally Schustershoff, I've been on the board for 4 years, currently the vice chair. So if I'm not reappointed, there's nobody to run the meeting today. We're not done. We're not done doing what we need to do for the county, and I want to be a part of it. We're going to have a large staff turnover in the next, we've already started, and then continuing for the next year or two because our staff is aging. And it's just become kind of the centerpiece of my life. I participate in their activities, I help run their activities, I volunteer there, and that is over and above what I do with the board. So I just want to keep doing it. My dad had a big thing about leaving a legacy, and I would like the COA to be my legacy for Berry County.
That's great. So as the commission representative on the COA board, I'll start with a question. Same question to both of you. We'll start with Sally. How do we reach out and increase participation to individuals outside the city of Hastings?
We have talked about that a lot on the board and how to get Nashville specifically involved. We've tried a lot of outreach things and somehow it just hasn't triggered. So
Maybe it's their commissioner.
Pardon?
Maybe it's their commissioner.
Yeah. Luckily, we did switch how we provide meals for that area, and it has been very successful. They now are able to go to one of the local restaurants. We need to continue with things like that. We need to continue getting activities, in Dalton and in Woodland and around the county, not just in our Hastings facility for outreach purposes and because our Hastings facility isn't big enough for everything we want to do. So
Right.
We need to keep brainstorming that. I'm the youngest member on the board. We may need to get some younger people, and I'm officially now a senior. And to continue to do that and through outreach, be available. I think who is this for needs to be used more because it's not just for 70 and over. It's for anyone that wants to participate.
All right.
And I think we start our programs at 50. So.
And the last question for you before you turn over to Don, what's the most rewarding part of serving on the COA board?
I think probably giving back for the services that were offered my parents.
Great.
It was a lifesaver for us. And to be a part of that is.
Thank you. Don, how do we reach out to people outside of the city that live ways away?
I talk to senior citizens like myself. It's pretty easy for me to do. See, I'm one of them.
You're not afraid to talk to people, are you, Don?
What?
You're not afraid to talk to people, are you?
No, I'm not. I enjoy talking with people and finding out their views and so forth. I think we could do a better job at that. I think if we should go out into the county or city, the county, and make ourselves more well-known. Like I said to start with, I think the name of the organization hinders us in people coming into it. I know there's a bunch of people my age that are still alive that don't come. And I think that I've talked with them, and they just think it's something that they don't want any part of because of it. And I think the name, again, is a big deterrent. I would like to see us also do some other things. We do a lot now, don't get me wrong. I'm not finding fault with anybody, but I think there's some other avenues we could look at to have seniors get more involved. And maybe with that, the people would get interested and come in. Right. Other than that, I've been there a long time, and I'm just trying to help out.
That's great. Real quick, what's the most rewarding part about serving on the COA board?
What?
What's the most rewarding part about serving on the COA board?
The people. You meet the people. The people on the board, of course, but also the people that do come in. You get to be with them and just talk with them and see how they feel about some things. And again, that's where part of my perspective is from those people. The people I see outside of the board, downtown and around, that's what I get my things from, my thoughts and
all right. We're going to go into questions from commissioners. Vice Chair Connor?
Thank you. Ben stole my question about reaching out to the county. I mean, he didn't steal it. He didn't know. I was thinking
It was
on those-
planned. It's premeditated.
Yeah. But I want to say, having served on the board for 6 years, both of these individuals are not afraid to speak their minds. They're outspoken. They ask the hard questions. And I have no questions for them. They're both great individuals to serve on that board.
Commissioner Jackson?
Thank you both for reapplying and for your service on this board. Don, what would you rename? What would you rename or rebrand?
I thought one of the things, and there's more than one name you could use, but Senior Center, I thought, would be a much better thing than Commission on Aging. You're scaring people.
Don Bowers Activity Center.
No, don't need that. That would push people away.
No further questions. Thank you both.
Commissioner Campbell.
Good morning. Just like to reiterate that our county is blessed to have people like these two people that'll dedicate their time and efforts. My mother gets Meals on Wheels out in Delton. She's in Florida right now, bless her. But she just loves that. She loves the being able to chat with somebody for a couple minutes, and she looks forward to it. So keep up what you do. Don, I think you're on a good idea with your name change. It sounds like something very reasonable, so get to work on that. All right. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Commissioner Getty?
I don't have any questions, just thank you for reapplying and being willing to continue to serve.
Thank you. Commissioner Smelker?
I have no questions either, but thank you for what you do.
And Commissioner Gibson?
I've stopped in there occasionally, and I've seen these two people volunteering, and I'd like to thank them for applying and keep up the good work.
Yes, that's all of our questions for you guys. Thank you for reapplying. So we have 3 more applicants. What are the board's wishes? Do we want to do 2 and then 1, or have 3 of them at the same time? I think we can fit 3 at that table. Can we have an extra chair that, up at the,
Are they all 3 here?
yeah, so can we have Lois, Betsy, and Carrie come forward? We're getting an extra chair.
Michael?
Thank you, Adam.
Adam's got one.
Can have a seat anywhere. Are we missing somebody today? Okay.
Way back in the corner.
It is a little difficult to get back. So your name is?
Betsy.
You're Betsy, okay.
Carrie.
Carrie and Lois. So you individuals are not incumbents on the board, and you would like to serve. So what I'm going to do is allow you guys to introduce yourself, tell us why you applied, and what you will bring to the COA board. We'll start with you, Betsy. If you could speak to that microphone.
Okay, thank you. Not spoken into a microphone very much. My name is Betsy Colgan. Thank you for having me here. Probably most of you feel the same way. I'm just kind of happy to be anywhere these days. So. I'm not originally from Hastings. I'm from the east side of the state in Thumb area. I graduated from Michigan State University. I lived in Chicago for a few years, and then I moved to Virginia, where I married and raised my family. But I visited Hastings many times over the years because I have family here. And I always loved it. I thought it was a great town. I watched it grow and change a lot. And I would think, oh, maybe when I retire, I might move back here. So in 2013, I did retire, and I moved here. And,
What did you do?
Oh, I worked in publishing for many years. So,
Great.
I looked around after moving here for some volunteer opportunities. So I've been a team captain on the Relay for Life and raised funds for our last event. Our last event that was in August at Titan Park. I was elected as a precinct captain in the 4th Ward. I'm a poll worker for the past 3 years, and I plan to continue to do that. And I'm secretary of our condo association. At some point, a couple months ago, I think I became aware that there were some openings on the COA board, so I thought, I think I would like to apply here. So I went online and I looked, did some research, and I saw that there were 3 committees in the COA board, I think client services, finance, and personnel. And when I looked at the duties of some of those committees, I realized that my past work experience fit with that kind of nicely. I worked in publishing for my entire career. I started out as a production editor and moved up to a senior managing editor. Some of my duties including reviewing and soliciting bids and proposals, supervising staff, editing and proofreading medical articles for medical journals, and learning and operating several computer programs that related to publishing. So,
Oh, I'm a graphic artist, InDesign?
yes. I did
I'm
not
impressed.
actually, I had a staff person that did that, but I'm pretty
Just the nerd in me had to ask.
Well, I did a lot of graphics way back when it was cut and paste, I have to admit. So when I was on the COA site, I looked around and noticed all the services that they offer. Meals on Wheels, home health aides, help for income tax, helping seniors navigate Medicare, the Medicare environment. And I know we all know how important those are for seniors to stay healthy and engaged and have a good quality of life and be able to stay in their own homes. And let's face it, many of us will be using those services at times, some sooner than others. And I have seen evidence of the services of the COA in my neighborhood every day. I see Meals on Wheels, I see a couple home health aides, and I myself have used the handyman service many, many times. And I'm always surprised when I talk to my neighbors or friends in the community. A lot of them don't know anything about this handyman service, which I think is kind of a shame. So anyway, I think that's enough about me, but I hope that with my work experience and commitment to the services and of the COA that you would consider me to be on the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carrie, if you'd like to introduce yourself and explain why you would like to serve on the COA board. If you could grab the microphone there.
Hello. So excuse me. My name is Carrie McCormick. I am a lifelong resident of Berry County, except for when I left to go to college. But Berry County will always be my home. I have a master's degree in social work, and I am fully licensed. I've been employed with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services for over 11 years, 7 of which I was employed as an adult services caseworker here in Berry County.
Oh, wow.
I provided case management services to senior citizens and adults with disabilities. During my time here as a caseworker, I found my niche working with adults. I found my passion serving adults, senior citizens specifically, and I found I was very impressed by the resilience of the senior citizens here in Berry County. And through my work, I had a lot of interactions with the Berry County Commission on Aging. And the services that they provided to seniors in this county was very meaningful to me. So I recently took a new position. I'm still with the state as a departmental analyst, although not overseeing Berry County anymore. And I found myself really missing my connection with the residents of Berry County. When the opportunity was brought to my attention that there were openings. Sorry. I'm so nervous. When it was brought to my attention that there was an opening to sit on the board of directors for the Commission on Aging, I felt that I had a responsibility to apply. I am a strong believer in investing in the community that you live. Because of that, I also serve, I am the vice president of the Delton Elementary Parent-Teacher Association. So
You're busy.
Yes, I am. But I love it. So yes, I believe in investing in the community that you live in. My husband's a business owner in this community and has been for a very long time.
I've heard that takes up a lot of time.
Which?
A business owner?
Yes, it is. So I know that was a very short, condensed version. I apologize, but that is
That's
what
great.
brought me here today.
Where'd you go to school?
Delton Elementary.
How about college, too?
Western Michigan University. Well, I went to
Go Broncos!
Well, I went to University of Illinois in Chicago,
Okay.
and then I transferred to Western Michigan University. I also obtained my master's degree from there as well.
All right.
I also have a graduate certificate in the specialized program for alcohol and drug addiction as well.
From Western?
Yes.
I think we have the same degree.
Perhaps.
Yeah. Well, thank you for applying. And Lois Bowers, who's been a longtime friend of this Board of Commissioners and a longtime activist, or I shouldn't say activist, longtime volunteer in the city of Hastings. Good morning, Lois. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you'd like to serve on the COA board?
I've been here all my life.
Mm-hmm.
We lived down south of town, and then Don and I, when we were married, we moved into town, and
Mhm.
I've been the city girl of the family. I worked at Consumers Energy, drove to Lansing. I worked in the customer service department for 30 years.
Mhm.
Ended up in the complaint department, which was fun.
Consumers, I'm sure my phone might already.
But you learn.
How many of the calls were from Don?
Pardon?
How many calls were from Don?
Calls from Don? None. And I have been associated, I retired like the 1st of April in that same year. By the end of April, I had signed on to be a counselor at COA with the MAP program, which is the Medicare, Medicaid Assistance Program. And it's just been very, very rewarding. I don't think enough people know in the community about the program. And it's just so rewarding to be able to help them navigate through their Medicare and their Medicaid and go out with a smile. So.
Great. So I'll ask the first question. We'll stick with you, Lois. Then we'll move this way across the table. What unique skills or abilities can you bring to the COA board?
Well, after working in customer service, you become a very good listener.
Mm-hmm.
And you navigate through some problems. And I've learned to do that.
Great. Thank you. Go to you, Carrie. What unique skills or talents can you bring to the COA board?
Well, my passion for serving senior citizens is always going to be at the forefront of that. Professionally, I would say my experience and understanding the needs of senior citizens and the resources that are available to senior services. Through my career, I have sat on many committees, focus groups, and strategic planning committees to work to identify needs of populations and then coming up with action plans to meet those needs.
Okay, so planning it out. Betsy?
Yeah. I think a lot of my skills from my past employment would serve well on some of the committees for the board. I have a good ability to get along with and work with all kinds of people. I worked in medical associations and worked with a lot of doctors and PhDs, and as brilliant as all of them are, they can be sometimes difficult to work with. They're very demanding, so I was able to work and get along with that group, and I just believe in the vision and the mission statements of the COA and how they help seniors.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Gibson?
Yes, Betsy, have you attended any of the meetings at the COA?
I have not.
Have you volunteered up there?
I have not. I have an application I'm getting ready for the Meals on Wheels. I just started to get interested in that.
Same questions for Carrie.
Have I attended any of the meetings at Commission on Aging? Yes, I've attended several meetings throughout the years. I've also attended their spaghetti dinners and participated and, purchased that when they do their gift basket, their fundraisers and whatnot. Yes, I do try to enable.
Lois, I used to be on the Area Agency on Aging Board with Lois, and she's pretty punctual. She attends all the meetings, and every time I'm at the COA, Lois is up there volunteering, so I don't have any questions for you.
But I do have one thing to say that
One thing to say to Hoot, yeah.
all of you, that the clients that we have, I would say 90% of them don't realize what we have available at COA. And many of them I've taken on a tour and said, introduced them to all these different things, and that there's many don't even know there's lunch. Well, that's a pretty cheap lunch for a senior.
Thank you. Commissioner Smelker?
I have no questions. Thank you for applying.
Commissioner Getty?
I don't have any questions, just I think over the last year, it's been eye-opening for me how many volunteers on boards it takes to run all these programs, and we couldn't do it without people volunteering, so thank you.
Commissioner Campbell?
Good morning. I'd just like to say, obviously, thank you for being here. We've ran into this problem before where we have 3 absolutely excellent candidates here. And hopefully if somebody is not going to be on that board, but we have lots of other boards that could really use your talents. So appreciate you being here.
Commissioner Jackson?
No questions, just a comment that we appreciate your application. You guys all have some unique skill sets and a passion for serving seniors, and we need that in the community. So regardless of how the board moves forward, I hope you can all stay involved with the COA and helping out, because it is so appreciated what you guys are doing for your community. So thank you.
And Vice Chair Connor?
Thank you. Thank you for applying. I have a question. I was
That I didn't steal.
Yes, that he didn't steal, but I served on the COA board, and I too am a senior. My hair used to be as dark as Catherine's. I was a brunette. Unfortunately, now I'm white. So maybe it's this job. No,
It is.
No, I was white
It is.
long before this job. So
I can attest.
I have a question. And COVID really brought it to the forefront for me, and that is, it was just coming to the forefront and becoming a real problem, and that's isolation for seniors. So starting with Betsy, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What would be an idea that you might have on how you can help reach seniors that are isolated? And it doesn't have to be because they can't get out. It just sometimes is you become accustomed to it. And during COVID, it was a struggle to be so isolated.
Right, we all were, still are to some extent. I think what I found is to just bring it down to a local level, to my community, to my condo association, where I can actually have some better input. I know everybody. I put out regular information to our owners when things come up, like I've sent around information on the handyman services because so many people didn't know that, and everybody in my development are basically seniors. So I think just for each person to bring it down to a local level and do what you can in your neighborhood or your condo association to reach out to everybody in your neighborhood or in my condo association. Stop by, check on them, see if there's anything that you can do to help. Some of them can't drive, some of them don't have cars. So I think just bring it down to a local level is what I would do.
Carrie?
What I would do to address isolation in senior citizens in Berry County, I think first I would start off by establishing a focus group with that goal in mind. And then I would work towards establishing partnerships with community partners or social workers at the hospital, caseworkers at CMH or adult services that, have daily contact with those folks. And then really elbow grease, I don't know how else to say, get out in the community, start working on identifying those folks and making yourself available to them. But, having an idea and a vision wouldn't be enough. You would need to have volunteers, and you would need to have volunteers committed to that cause.
Thank you. Thank you, too, Betsy. Lois, thanks for all you do. We've served together on the Carewell Services Board.
Yes. I had to work, so I realized what how difficult we had to continue through open enrollment. It was awful trying to help these people and explain to them over the phone rather than give them a piece of paper and say, now this, and this. But with all the regulations we had from our higher ups, there wasn't really much we could do, unfortunately. I didn't like doing phone calls to resolve these problems. I'm a people person, so I need to talk to you and see you.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our applicants. We're going to make a decision next week. Appreciate all of your service. If there's no objection, the board will take a short recess, 5 minutes. Hearing no objection, the board is at recess.
You're going to see that they're always asking, so I keep telling them that, hey, Berry County doesn't have money. We're not interested in these bigger health departments. So you got to... We're not interested in being employed for Land Sands or Grand Rapids.
The committee will come to order.
A bunch.
At this time, we will move forward to a request from the Public Defender's Office. This time, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the attached 2022 contracts for Indigent Defense Council Services with Jackie Baker, Carol Dwyer, Shane Henry, Kristen Hole, James Kinney, Gordon Shane McNeil, Catherine Russell, and Kimberly Young.
I'll make that motion.
Support.
Motion is made by Gibson, supported by Smelker. Discussion. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what do we have here?
So we have our yearly contracts. We have 8 attorneys so far this year. We do have 2 open positions that we are working to fill. At this point, I am filling the gap, as is our new Assistant Public Defender, William Renner, who we hired last week. He has 40-plus years of experience, so he's jumped right in with both feet. So just our standard yearly contract. There's no changes to the contract from years past, so we're just asking that you approve them. I will say again, and I will keep touting this to the rooftops, Berry County is doing an excellent job in the face of COVID. All of my MIDC counterparts have issues and complaints and backlogs. We don't have that here. We're right on track and we're doing very well.
Great, thank you. Questions, comments from commissioners? We'll start with Commissioner Smelker.
I just want to thank Carrie. I like it when we get no complaints, and we haven't got none that I know of out of the Public Defender's Office. Thank you, Carrie.
We try.
Commissioner Gibson.
I have no questions.
Vice Chair Connor.
No changes at all, not even an increase in the salaries or the
Well, some
contracts?
of the people bumped up. That's why there's a change in
Okay.
we had, I think, 2 people moved from the second tier first tier to second tier. And so that's the $6,000 difference.
Okay, but the tiers didn't
No,
change?
the tiers
Okay.
did not change. The amounts are
That's
the
my
same.
only question. Thank you, and thank you for all that they do. Like, yes, I have not heard any complaints.
Except from the other side of the courtroom.
That's okay. We don't have to complain. It means we're doing our job, right?
Great.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jackson.
Carrie, caseloads during COVID?
A little bit down from last year. I think our attorneys usually average between 70 and 80 cases a year. That was felonies and misdemeanors. With the assistant public defender position, that attorney was taking most of the misdemeanors. Our attorneys average between 60 and 70 cases. Our caseload, their caseloads, they're kind of down a little bit. Mine's through the roof at this point with probation violations and other things, but it's pretty steady if you average it out, I think.
Okay, so no need to expand at this point? You're not looking, everything's under control?
Nope, we're good.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Campbell.
Good morning.
Morning.
You said you had 2 positions yet to fill.
On the contract, we're approved through MIDC and here for 10 contract attorneys. Mr. Storrs chose not to renew this year, and we had an open position. So we have 2 contract attorney positions open, which we are working to fill.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
And Commissioner Getty.
I don't have any questions, but congratulations on no complaints and no backlog. It's impressive.
The whole court system has worked really hard to make sure we
Right.
keep moving.
Yeah, and I don't have any other questions, just a comment. Thank you for your leadership in this department. This is a fairly new endeavor for the Board of Commissioners and for counties across Michigan, and it's been a success here in Berry County.
I agree, thank you.
Is there further discussion? Hearing none, the question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the attached 2022 contracts for Indigent Defense Council services with Jackie Baker, Carol Dwyer, Shane Henry, Kristen Hole, James Kinney, Gordon Shane McNeil, Catherine Russell, and Kimberly Young. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have a request from the Berry County Trial Court. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend that the Board of Commissioners approval of the Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding CESF grant contract and authorize the chairperson to sign the agreement. Sign the contract.
So moved, Jackson.
Support.
That motion is made by Jackson, supported by Getty. Good morning, Inez.
Good morning.
What do we have here?
Well, we were notified by the Michigan State Police that there were additional funds available.
Could you pull that mic closer?
Sure. Additional funds were made available for courts. We decided to apply. The maximum amount was $75,000. I think they had about $11 million in requests, but $3 million to distribute. So we were recipients of $30,360. With those funds, we're looking at imaging some of our court files to assist us with making sure that we deal with the storage issue that we're currently facing.
So this grant is a continuation of the type of grant we've applied for in the past?
It's very similar to that. Yeah, it's a new round, so it's not a
Okay.
continuation. We did have a continuation agreement signed back in June to extend the first round of funds that weren't expended. So this is a similar contract, identical, except it's new in the sense that the funds will be tied to imaging some files.
Thank you. Questions or comments from commissioners? Anybody have a question or comment?
I have a couple of questions.
Vice Chair Connor.
Thank you. So when I was looking through here, it didn't really give a very good description of what this money was supposed to be sent for, because I was wondering about your imaging. The funds will be used to assist with imaging cases.
Yes.
And I didn't know how that might, with the COVID funds, how does that help?
Well, it helps by reducing the amount of people that are in the file room because the case files will be available on our court system. It's one of the things that the county clerk and I have been working on, trying to image documents, reduce the number of people that are coming in. That way we can, if a request is made out of a court file, we can send that electronically to the requesting party. And it reduces the amount of people that are in our file room at one time, going through case files.
The other question I have is regarding the reporting requirements. Who's going to be responsible for reporting on this? You?
We are, yes. The court is currently responsible for the first round to submit those reports, and we're responsible for the second.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Further questions or comments? Hearing no further questions, the question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding Grant Contract and authorize the chairperson to sign the agreement. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're just going to rearrange the room a little bit because I expect a lot of people coming up for public comment. So bear with us for 3 minutes. If there's no objection. Hearing none, we'll recess for 3 minutes.
You need help?
Move into ARPA deliberations and recommendations. Next slide. Next slide. So for today's meeting, we have 6 different parts in this. 1, we're going to recap Berry County's ARPA process. 2, we're going to hear about the federal update to the program. And we're going to talk about the board's feelings about our current process. Then we're going to move into public comment for those of you here that want to comment on the process or individual comments. And then we're going to ask questions and get answers on process and projects from the task force. Then we're going to move into recommendations if the board so chooses. Next slide. Next slide. So this is a process of where we are. So Berry County received nearly $12 million in American Rescue Plan Act funding. The initial rules state that these funds can be spent in 4 categories, each related to the pandemic. Lost public sector revenue, responding to public health and economic impacts, premium pay, water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. Commissioners ultimately control all funding decisions and partnered with the task force to solicit ideas and to make metric-based evaluations of submissions. The task force reached out for ideas and evaluated the project submissions and then made round 1 funding recommendations. Out of 2 rounds, each 50% of the funding allocated. A town hall meeting was held to hear feedback on the process and merits of individual recommended projects. Today, we are scheduled to hear public comment, discuss the task force's process and recommendations, and decide next steps of where we go. And if the board so chooses, next week we'll approve round 1 funding allocations. So this is the process in a visual. We have the round open, moving forward to submissions and evaluations from the task force, which they'd make recommendations, move to the public forum, questions and answers and deliberation, then finally ARPA funding allocated projects. Next slide. We are right here, where we evaluate what we've heard and what we've seen in the process before we move on to the next part. But as we are well aware, Congress sometimes changes the rules of the game. And last week they did pass new guidance on what we're allowed to use this money for. So Michael and or Mark, if you want to give us an overview of what has changed. We're going to have a lot of public comments.
Good morning, thank you. Real quickly, for those that have not met Mark Nettleton, Mark is an attorney with Micah Myers. We use 2 attorneys on a regular basis. Dave Stoker is one you're familiar with Cole Stoker and Toski out of Lansing. Their firm, and specifically Dave, does our civil and labor relations work. Mark Nettleton and his firm have done over the past our bonding and public works types projects. So I reached out to Mark to talk a little bit with him about the final rule and then the projects that are before you to take a look at. And Mark's going to give you a quick update on the federal final rule that was just issued. So
Mark, thank you for being with us today.
Morning. Good to see
So
everybody.
what has the federal government changed?
Well, first off, if
He
I
brings
may-
out his notebook.
Yeah.
binder.
So right here, from this tab to this tab, is what came out roughly last week. Okay. It's about 400 pages of guidance. So Congress passed, the President signed the American Rescue Plan Act in March of 2021. In, I think it was, let's see, my notes say in May of 2021, Treasury put out the interim rule to provide guidance to municipalities and states on the use of these funds.
And if I could interject, that interim rule are those 4 broad categories?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And actually, those 4 broad categories were in the statute. And so then the interim rule kind of fleshed out a little bit more in terms of what the uses of the money could be put to. And a lot of, so the rule is fairly short, maybe 30, 40, 50 pages. But it's the supplemental information, that guidance and explanation by the Treasury Department to provide guidance to the municipalities on what it can be used for. And so that large chunk here isn't necessarily the rule, but it's the supplemental information. And actually, the good news with respect to the final rule that just came out on the 6th of January is that Treasury was trying to streamline the process and kind of broaden the categories, flesh out a little bit more opportunities for use of the funds, and provide kind of simplification in terms of reporting. So an example of this streamlining is, of the 4 categories, roughly public need, public health need and economic impact, I call premium pay, basically financial assistance to essential workers, revenue loss and government services being a 3rd category, and the 4th category, sewer, water, and broadband. With respect to that 3rd category of revenue loss and government services, the federal government basically said, we're going to assume a maximum of $10 million to a recipient can be allocated for revenue loss, so that that money can be utilized without having to kind of justify and do calculations. That money can be used to pay for government services that the local government typically pays from general funds that are provided by tax revenues and the like. A municipality like the county can go through a formula and determine that we have revenue loss more than the 10 million, such that if you went through the formula, you could determine that all of your $12 million is going to be allocated to this revenue loss and be utilized for government services. You have to make an election, whether you're going to do the standard $10 million allowance or do the formula so that all of your money could fit within that category of revenue loss for government services. But the flexibility that you have under the rule is, if you have projects that would fit in each of these categories, you can allocate projects to those categories. So you can, on some of your projects, they're investments into infrastructure, like water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, stormwater infrastructure. So you can allocate some of your funds to that category and fit within the eligible uses there. And then that means that you have within that $10 million limit, presumably, to utilize for your government services under the revenue loss category. So the rule was essentially, the final rule kind of broadened some of those categories. Within each of these categories, however, there are restrictions and limitations on what you can do with the money. You cannot use it to pay debt service on existing obligations. You cannot put it in rainy day funds. You cannot use it to fulfill pension obligations. Those are some general categories. You can't use it for purposes that would be contrary to COVID mitigation efforts. And let's see, I'm trying to think if there is other restriction that I wanted to mention. I think that's it for now.
So broadly, they just clarified what you can't do?
No, they, one, reaffirmed what was included in the interim rule. And in particularly with the revenue loss category.
They spent 400 pages clarifying what they did.
Correct. Okay. Right. Wow. Yes.
Oh, we push it. I'm sorry, continue.
I'll just comment real quickly. In some of the material they provided, they received over 1,500 comments, is what they indicated, and responded to all those comments. So Whether that seems like for a national project a lot or not, I don't know. I wouldn't want to be the one to have to sit down myself and try to wade through responding to 1,500 comments, but they did in clarification.
Before we open it up to commissioner questions or comments, this really doesn't change the inability to use these funds for a county jail, right? If we had a bond, if we had to pass a millage for it?
So generally, under the statute and then the interim final rule, the only permitted expenditures on infrastructure were in the sewer, water, and broadband category. With this final rule, they've expanded that, and in the supplemental information say, for example, in the public health need and negative economic impacts categories, for example, you can expend money for infrastructure if it responds to those needs. And you have to justify, and in certain circumstances, depending on how much money you're spending, justify to the federal government that the infrastructure project that you're working on, proposing to do, meets these criteria and demonstrate how it meets the criteria. With respect to public health need and negative economic impacts, the supplemental information expressly prohibits use for funding infrastructure for a correctional facility. You say that expenditure doesn't meet that category. So you then have to say, is there some other category that we could utilize? When you look at the general services category, there is a restriction in the general services category for the revenue loss that essentially says you can use it for capital projects on a pay-go basis, which basically means that you have the cash on hand or with this money that you would typically pay for this project out of cash on hand as opposed to financing. So I think that's a significant limitation on the ability to say all of this money could just be put towards use of construction of a new jail.
And I'm asking these questions. I got this a day ahead of you guys. That was my first question. What does this mean for our long-term capital projects? It really doesn't change the fact that we would still have significant funding needs to construct a jail. We would still have to pass a millage, which appears to be prohibited by this new guidance. And that still doesn't give us the type of revenue we would need to guarantee the project is finished.
Right.
So while it is loosening up of restrictions, it's not to the point where it is a magic wand for all of our needs.
And there's a practical limitation too on such a significant capital project like that, and that is basically the spending restrictions, the time restrictions. You have to have the money obligated by December 31, 2024. You have to have it fully expended by December 31, 2026. And so a question whether you can get a capital project like that, even if permissible under the services category, if you get the money spent by that time.
Okay, I know this is a little in the weeds, but it's necessary that we hear this information so we can make decisions. We'll start with questions. We'll start with Commissioner Jackson.
So I'm basing this off a conversation with Michael. There was a formula that they allowed us to use at one point that would, for revenue replacement. That formula, basically, they did away with that and said, basically, if we wanted to, we could take $10 million off the top and put it in the county general fund for projects that meet the guidelines.
Yes, roughly. So you have an option, take that 10 million standard allowance and say that's all revenue loss.
Take it all for revenue loss.
And put it into your general fund for governmental services, which is circularly defined as services that are typically provided by the government. Or you can, so say that you wanted to use the full allocation, 11 million plus, you can go through, the county can go through the process in the formula and determine, do we have revenue loss equal to the full amount? If you do that calculation, then all of that can be allocated to that category.
Thank you.
Commissioner Campbell.
I have no questions, but I have lots of information I'm trying to digest, so.
It is a lot of information.
It's a lot of information.
Commissioner Getty.
Do you have any concerns about the projects that are listed by the task force recommendations as meeting the requirements in the final rule?
Michael asked me to take a look at the projects and the recommendations of the committee. I did do that. I don't have concerns. I kind of looked at it and allocated them where I thought they would best fit in terms of the 4 categories. For example, you have projects for Berry Township and the village of Freeport involving water improvements. To me, it seems like that's an easy allocation to say, okay, we are taking part of our $11 million and we're allocating it under the sewer, water, broadband infrastructure. And then with the other ones that were both ranked, scored, and recommended, all that list I looked at and categorized, and I don't have an issue with those. I think they're appropriate uses of the funds. They can be categorized within the 4 categories.
I had a second question. During public comment, there was reference to Grand Rapids or Kent County, I'm not sure which, about concerns about allocations they've already made and concerns about the feds asking them to pay it back. Do you have any knowledge of that?
I don't. Not
okay. I hadn't either. Okay. Thank you.
Do you have any concern on that? Just to follow up, that the federal government would do a clawback?
Well, so under the rule, under the statute, the phrase is recoupment. And at any time through this process, if there's reporting done by the county in this example, whereby the federal government says, yeah, no, that doesn't fit within a category, then you can be required to pay that back. There is an appeal process, a notification appeal process, and essentially once that appeal process, so the Secretary of Treasury is supposed to make a determination. You have 60 days to request a reconsideration, kind of explain your justification for how this fits in eligible use category. Then the Secretary, I believe, has 60 days, and after that 60 days, if the determination is no, it was an ineligible use, and you have to pay it back, the county would have 120 days from that point to pay it back.
In your expertise, this was designed to address gross, egregious negligence of the
I
act?
think so. I mean, I think obviously when we're
if I built a water park, it would be a no-no.
That would be a stretch, yes. Because water infrastructure, I don't mean to be flip, but if it helps recirculating of municipalities' water system.
He told me to ask that. So, thank you. I'm sorry, Commissioner Getty. Did you have another question?
No, thank you, Mark.
Commissioner Smelker.
No questions. Thank you for what you do, Mark.
Commissioner Gibson.
Question I had already been asked.
Thank you. Commissioner Vice Chair Connor.
Thank you. I want to piggyback on Catherine's, and I wanted to know that you had looked at, did you look at all of the ones that scored on the sheet?
Yes.
Even like the drains?
Yes.
And I had a long talk with Bonnie Getty last week, and do you think that they would fit in the request and meet the guidelines?
Yeah, so
the amended guidelines.
My opinion would be, in a lot of the proposals, there's a lot of work that was done in trying to meet certain sub-criteria, if you will, within categories. Like we're trying to provide assistance to people who don't have or have challenged financial needs. So we're trying to help them with assessments. And, because you have the sewer, water, broadband category that authorizes investments in an infrastructure and authorizes the county to make transfers of these funds to another local unit, like the Drain Commissioner's office. They would be a subrecipient, by the way. We can talk about what that means. But it's just easier to kind of say, we are providing these funds. We're transferring these funds to the Drain Commissioner to provide for this sewer, water, or stormwater infrastructure project, period. As opposed to trying to say, and by doing that, we're going to wind up, alleviating a financial impact on particular property owners. Just kind of use it to reduce the overall cost.
Okay. So I want to make sure I understand that right, first of all. So rather than having the application period and serving only those that are under limitations, it would just be taking the money and putting it down on the whole project, and then the assessment would be changed for all the, is that what you're saying?
So I'm basically saying from the county standpoint, in terms of documenting it and fitting into a category, it's easier for the county to basically say, we're transferring this money to the drain commissioner for the purposes of this sewer, water, stormwater infrastructure project, period.
Okay, period, okay. And for the audience, because you.
I will note, Commissioner, we do have scheduled in deliberations projects not recommended, so you can ask specific questions related to specific items on that list.
Okay. I just was gonna, so that people understood why I was asking
Please.
that. When I asked Bonnie why those kind of dropped off, and basically, I mean, they did good work and they made their recommendation. There was a letter from the drain commissioner's attorney, and so their part in it was kind of done. You know, they did their job. Doug Kelly had written a letter kind of asking some questions and saying, here's what we're looking at and want you to look at. But they did what they were supposed to do, and anything after that became this board's issue, not theirs. They weren't going to hire an attorney or a consultant to get a second opinion. That is what we're here for. So I just wanted you to know, you know, what had happened in that conversation, just so you had some kind of understanding about why we didn't talk about these at the forum, because it literally had, a question had come up, and so it really was not up to that committee anymore. It's
And I'd
this
like to
board's
continue
job.
this discussion, and I'd like to go back to that.
Yes.
Do we, and I,
That was
which
the
way
only
did I go?
question I had. I mean, I wanted to just kind of piggyback on,
Yeah.
on those. So
Good
thank you.
questions.
Thank you.
Have I got to everybody, Dave?
John had a question.
John?
Well, mine, and we could take up later too, but seeing as we have passed and had bonds issued for these drains, wouldn't that be considered debt and you can't pay debt?
Well,
I'm sorry.
no,
I had
mean,
that question too.
you cannot, it is clear that you can't use it to pay the debt service.
It almost seems like you have to have some shovel-ready concept ready to go
That you can't borrow money on.
that you can't borrow money on.
That
Is that fair?
That is certainly true under the revenue loss general services category, where I mentioned that pay-go language. That's certainly true there.
So if my water park was under 10 million, and let's say the water park was acceptable. No, I'm not going to use my water park. Let's say we had a specific public health investment. It was under 10 million, and we could pay for it all. That would be treated differently than a public health investment that was 15 million that we had passed bonds for, right?
I think, well, different rules would apply, because in the example that you've given, it could fit within the public health and
Right.
and
The
negative
point of it
economic
is
impact.
that the debt and the having to borrow changes the eligibility.
Certainly under the general services, revenue loss general services category.
I know we can't provide 100% clarity for what Congress has done to us and done to this man. But does that answer your question, John?
As good as it can be, yes.
Any other questions on the federal process and the changes?
If I can make one comment.
Yes, please.
So it will not be, unfortunately, just as easy as the fact that you approve these projects and you say, here's your money. There will be contracts that will be required, particularly where you're transferring it to another entity, because the county is going to be obligated to justify how this money was used. And it would be appropriate for the county to say, since we're being held liable and responsible, subrecipient, you too are being held liable and responsible as well. So we have that, what's the word I want?
Accountability.
Accountability, yes. Thank you.
And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Any other questions?
I had a question for Michael.
I got one more question.
And then Commissioner Getty, then Commissioner Gibson.
Have you had any counties refuse this money?
Not that I'm aware of in terms of counties, no. I don't know, Michael, if you know that.
I'm not aware of any counties that haven't accepted the funds, no.
And like in terms of Michigan municipalities, I think it's a fairly small universe of like townships. I think I had heard something like a dozen perhaps throughout the state.
Getty.
Mark just referenced, contracts for these accountability, a certain amount of administration expenses associated with receiving these funds and allocating the funds. Do you have an idea of percentage of administrative expenses that we should reserve so that we don't allocate 100% of our 12 million and then come up short?
I guess the first thing that I'll say, and I'll defer you to Michael, is that administrative expense is an eligible expense for the county and can be charged against these funds.
I'm sorry. You weren't talking directly into the microphone. Did you say ineligible or uneligible?
They are eligible.
Okay, are eligible.
It is eligible.
Ineligible.
I don't have a good sense. That's one of the challenges that's facing, that all of us are facing, is we just don't have a relationship with the federal government. If it were the state of Michigan that was passing these funds through, we have a history of understanding kind of what their rules are, their requirements, their processes. So I'd have a better idea of being able to give you some sense. I just don't with the federal government. We're certainly going to have to work with Mark to make sure that the contracts are in place. The reporting, the first report's due at the end of this month. It's a fairly straightforward report. It's not a complicated one. That'll start to give us some idea. But I just don't. One of the things that I'll be looking at is there is, if you may, in the universe of the ARPA funds, there are some consultants, public sector consultants is one of them out of Lansing I've been in touch with. I like public sector consultants in that they have a number of county staff, folks that I know from former county positions, very knowledgeable. The other one that I like is that they are on an hourly basis. They're sort of an a la carte company. They'll do as little or as much, if you may, as you want, where others want to do it on a percentage of the total project.
Right.
So we'll be looking to see if reporting is something that we need to work with them on or not, but I just don't know at this moment.
Right, certainly legal expenses, may be something, the reporting we can handle in-house, but as we go into the second round of funding, I think we need to be cognizant that that's something we need to have accounted for.
We'll be cautious of course, we hate to spend any more dollars on consultants than we ever have to. But we have a consultant that we work with on a regular basis, MGT Consulting. They do our cost allocation report. And the reason I bring that up is that the value that comes to that is they have a relationship with the state of Michigan.
Yeah, it's a peace of mind.
The state knows them and they know how to report. So it may come to... If that becomes a case where there's a consultant understands the reporting process and understands how to submit it, where if we do it on our own, we risk it being a little bit outside the bounds, we're going to take a look at that.
It was the intention of this board, and I believe the task force, to go down this process with a sterling level of investment, but also compliance. Commissioner Connor and then Commissioner Smelker.
Thank you. So this has a new effective date on this final rule of April 1st, 2022. Would you be recommending us to perhaps do our deliberations and then wait to make our final decision after that date?
Now, the supplemental information that just came out, the supplemental information that came out with the final rule on January 6th says that, yes, the final rule will be effective April 1st, but municipalities can follow these rules now. And so I think you could, it's up to the commissioner. You could make that decision now in light of the final rules being effective April 1st.
Okay. And I wanted to make a comment to Michael. Thank you for only giving me 50 pages and not that.
Appreciate it. Commissioner Smelker.
Yes, Michael, did you say there was a report due at the end of this month?
There is.
And could you tell me what all that curtails?
Effectively,
Kinda?
what
Short?
they're just looking to see what funds the recipient is expecting to allocate. So they're just trying to get a sense of how many funds have already been allocated. I don't know if that's for a cash flow purpose or, but that's really, it's not binding. So effectively, what we would, based on today, potentially would submit the projects that are under consideration. Is what I anticipate, unless the board makes a change otherwise. It does not bind you to anything. It is just to get
They just want to see where you are.
That's exactly it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Chairman.
Let's move ahead to the next slide. Next slide. So this is an important checkpoint in our process. Before we move forward, we need to ask ourselves a few things. One, are we largely satisfied with the process? What are its strengths? What are its weaknesses? Number two, are the issues and/or federal changes significant enough that we can't move forward with anything? And three, are there any changes we would like to see in the future? If we're comfortable and have consensus moving forward with these three things, then we can proceed on the path. But at this time, I'd like to open it up to discuss with the board. What are your thoughts? Mr. Smelker, what are your thoughts on these questions?
Now, I brought it up before, and there's a couple of things on there I'm not real excited about.
Individual projects.
Yeah, but we have done what I've asked for. We have an attorney with their expectations and also a consultant. So we are moving forward.
Commissioner Jackson, what do you think?
I would echo that. I think that the process was very deliberate. I think involving members from the community to take a look, research, score these projects, to go through it. I think the process was very, very well put together, thought through, to give us some telephone poles to evaluate some of the projects, some of the needs in the county. They've done that job. It's been a long process since I think the RFPs were due in September. So, I mean, this has been going on quite some time. So we've got a comprehensive list of things that benefit, some of them countywide, some of them a little more localized, but definitely some needs in the county that I think are being met by this. So I certainly appreciate the effort that was put in by members outside of this board to bring those recommendations to us. And I think that after talking with Michael, after hearing some reassurances, from the attorney, I think that we're set to move forward with these.
Are there any changes you'd like to see in the future? Round two?
I think round two, we need to take a look at one of the things that was brought up was broadband, that there was no broadband addressed in round one funding. It was more individual projects, and I think there's really a need to look at that in a countywide process. I know the Chamber and EDA is waiting on the results from a large grant that they've put in for. I don't know if there'll be matching fund requirements or anything like that, but I think broadband is a need that's countywide, so we need to look at.
Raise your hand if you have sucky internet in this room.
So we need to maybe look at some big picture projects from
Right.
the county. And broadband is certainly one of those that I think needs to be addressed, whether some, all, part, whatever of the remaining allocation is. I think that's something that our constituents throughout the county would appreciate us addressing. And if we have to take our time with that, I don't know that we need to dive into round 2 project funding next week. I think it's something that we need to really look and see where we can allocate and get the best bang for the buck, so to speak. And I think broadband is one of those things that we need to really wrap our brain around moving forward.
So you'd like to see broadband prioritized. Commissioner Getty, are you satisfied with the process?
I thought the process worked well. I think they, one of the biggest benefits to establishing the process that we did is we wanted to identify impactful projects. There are lots of projects throughout the county that would meet the criteria for funding, but we asked them to score them based on their impact and their long-lasting effect on the county and our residents. And I think they did that. I will echo Commissioner Jackson's comments about the second round. Broadband is a need. We know it's a need. We're waiting on a report. We're waiting on the decision on the grant funding. But my question to the consultant last week was, how do municipalities, the county, local units of government, how do we spend money on broadband? What is
Not
that?
how do we spend money on consultants? How do we?
Right, I want to know what can the county, what tools are in our toolbox at the county, at the township, at the village levels to incentivize the expansion of broadband to people who are underserved or unserved in the county.
I hear you saying that we have a lot of things in the works in broadband, and we still have to see the fruit of, yet to see the fruit of those investments.
Yeah, I think I'm ready to make recommendations for the first round of funding, but I think we have some things that we still need to get more information on for second round. So I would say, I think taking a pause is appropriate.
I want to interject here and talk about weaknesses. There's some issues that I saw with the process really weren't anything to do with the task force, but to do with my decisions on how we engage the public. We did not have the type of back and forth that people wanted to have at the forum. And part of that was the venue, that we had to be out by a certain time. Also, for one reason or not, some of our locals didn't get contacted or felt they didn't get contacted, and we want to make sure that all areas of the county have an opportunity to apply and put in for their requests. So to the extent that we can make sure future rounds reach out to, I would say, unsolicited areas of the county or undersolicited, that would be my priority. In my district, Nashville and Woodland, we don't have specific requests there. This isn't me just trying to get pork for my district. It's making sure that we do our due diligence to reach out to all areas of the county. This isn't saying we failed on anything. This is just saying we have some work to do. Transparency, I've heard some concerns on. Again, this isn't a criticism. It's just people asking questions, specifically for conflicts of interest. Those are my criticisms. My positive things are this board empowered a different group of people to do it, and I think the results that came back are things we can stand behind. The projects that were recommended clearly had a need established. We look at the top scoring applicant, the Barry Water Tower. They had their ducks in a row, and they were scored high because of that. So I'm largely satisfied with the process. I think it had strengths. I do think it had some weaknesses that with the leadership with this board we can address. Are there issues or federal changes significant enough that we can't move forward? I don't think so. The analysis that we've done and the diligence Michael and Mark Nettleton have looked into actually alleviate a lot of the concerns that we had, or some had, with projects. So with those restrictions loosening, it gives us more confidence that these fall into the federal guidelines. And are there changes we'd like to see in the future? Yes. Specifically, I'd like to see the geography prioritized a little more. So that's me interjecting. Vice Chair Connor, what are your thoughts?
Thank you. I was pretty satisfied with the process. This was something new to all of us. I mean, and it was something that when they approached her, when they approached you, and you brought it to me, I said, yeah, I thought it, we should bring it to the board, and I think they did a good job.
They did.
It was a lot of hard work. Doing things like this require a lot of time. So I'm satisfied. I had a great conversation with Bonnie last Friday, probably close to 20 to 30 minutes. And she has answered several questions, and I was very happy with it.
And you ask tough questions.
I don't know. I just ask questions that seem
Irrelevant.
they're relevant, it's.
Ordinary constituents.
Yes. Federal changes, I think that we got through this process. I appreciate Mark being here. I mean, I don't want to have him here for the next 3 weeks or anything, but.
Oh, no, we like Mark.
Yes, we do like you, Mark. But, I mean, but I would like us to be prudent and wait. I mean, it's not a race to get these funds expended. I know that probably the people that applied back in September are probably wondering if they, just like with any grant application or loan, that you want to know, do I think I might get that money from the county so that we can move forward with our project? Because with projects, some of these are, like the water tower, we are talking a construction project, it takes a lot of time to get those planned and contracted and, get where you're actually digging dirt and hammering.
Yep.
So, is there any are there any changes? Yeah, I would like to finish this round just the way that it is and then tweak round 2. I've had Ted DeVries ask me, what are we going to do are we going to carry over any that didn't get looked at? I've had lots of questions, Yankee Springs said they didn't get the application, so they've asked questions. Are they going to get an opportunity to maybe have a little weighted because they didn't get their notification? So I've had lots of questions come my way, but I would like to get totally through this process of round 1 and then look at it and make some tweaks.
So you're confident that we've investigated everything we can and that these projects fit, but would still make changes in the future?
Right. And perhaps in how and just,
I'm in the same boat.
Yeah.
I largely agree with everything you just said.
this was all new. I mean, so.
Yeah, it was all new. But with the help of the task force and the team here and our administration office, it does look, we are confident in it. Commissioner Campbell.
Being a new commissioner still, this has been quite a project. I agree with Vivian. I think our task force has done an amazing job. It was a mountain of information they've had to go through and time they volunteered. We're really fortunate to have this group of people. As far as the broadband, yes, I have crappy internet. And we know that the cost of broadband is staggering, but the cost of not doing something with it is even more. So I like where we're going, and I think we're on the right track.
Well said. And Commissioner Gibson.
Yes, I think the task force spent a lot of time on this project. I'd like for us to move forward with their suggestions.
Great. Thanks, guys. So next slide, please. Now we're going to move into public comment and the rules of public comment that apply traditionally at the beginning and the end apply here. Except for one additional thing, we ask that your comments be pertaining to ARPA or ARPA-related projects. So at this time, the chair would, any individual wishing to address the board on ARPA may do so for up to 3 minutes. If you could just say your name and your residence for the record.
Absolutely. Cheryl Lewis Blake, Hastings, Michigan. Good morning, commissioners and Michael. Let me begin by expressing my appreciation to you for serving our community, and I'm also grateful to the ARPA Task Force, who are volunteers, as you know, and who gave freely of their time to assist you. And I know those community servant leaders who were not interested in personal gain, but really try to live their lives, and I'll borrow our Rotary motto, in service above self. I appreciate the logic, I appreciate the rigor, and I especially appreciated that they numerically scored each grant application. Now, Blue Zones is a county-wide initiative. You guys know it's been funded by philanthropy and businesses with the goal of developing a comprehensive health and community well-being. But how do you improve the health of a community? It's not a one-or-done mini project, but a whole series of policy, systems, and environmental changes that enhance the health and well-being of county residents. What is unique about Blue Zones is that it's been a grassroots process that has community participation when assessing the needs and what's most important. And that brings me to the Community Food Center application and the request for ARPA grant funds. This project idea came from us. Now, when I say us, I don't mean us necessarily in the room, but from farmers, dairy, meat, grain, farmers, market persons, MSU Extension, social service entities like the Commission on Aging, downtown entrepreneurs, healthcare leaders, and individuals interested in growing downtown business volume. I think the effort represents a shared, strategic, and innovative vision of putting a project all under one roof. A project this large takes funds to plan for the implementation, and the grant request is just to do that. I implore you to fund the project for the citizens of Berry County so that we can enjoy a thriving, healthy, regional food and farm economy all under one roof. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further public comment? We'll go with Mr. Hertzler and then Sean.
Charles Hertzler, Hastings City. Oh, I want to remain calm at this. I'm going to try my very best, okay? Because I don't want to be.
We appreciate that.
Last night, you were at the same meeting I was, and unfortunately, a lot of these other people on the commission were not. And you heard the concerns of the people about the ARPA money. And there was a lot of comments made about tabling this money and working more with the people and stuff to come up with the conclusions of what to do with it. And many of the people said, why do we have to pay for water tower in Hastings Township? Because it's going to take a maintenance and cost to maintain that new system, and they obviously couldn't do it now with the system they got. It has been maintained. That's why it needs to be replaced or rebuilt or something. I mean, there was a lot of questions brought up last night, and you know it as well as I do, and I'd say 95% of the people over there were of the same opinion. Don't spend this money right now. Get more community involvement, give people, like, what's the water tower going to do for me? I live in the city and I pay a water and sewer bill every month. Okay? The people out there, why aren't they paying enough money to maintain their system? That benefits them, not me. All right? So you're causing a lot of division in this county by selecting this group, that group, whatever and stuff. I don't get it, Ben, because you were there last night. And some of the things you told me that you were going to consider, I didn't hear you speak about. All right? And I'm not going to call you out on all the different things and stuff because I only have 3 minutes. My concern is for the people of Berry County, for every taxpayer in this room and out there on the street and stuff, let's do something that benefits the entire community that everybody can get behind instead of a select group here, select group there, and causing even more division. All right? Because you know what the feelings of the people were at the meeting last night. I wish some of you guys, rest of you would have been there too because it was a very good meeting last night. It was a pretty good turnout too, wasn't it? So, anyways, if anybody here has questions of lawyers, can we ask questions of lawyers, or do we have to just strictly
This is public comment, your time to speak and our time to listen.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. So, after that, I'm going to go ahead and say thank you very much, and I will go to the public comment at the end.
Thank you. And just a programming note, we will have time for questions on individual projects here coming up very soon. Is there further public comment?
Michelle Peltier, Hastings. I would like to second Ms. Blake's, all of her comments, and also supplement it that everything that was, all the projects in review are worthy. Water infrastructure for Dalton is obviously critical. It's just for people to live in something that one community would not be able to come up with the funds. Same for the water tower in Freeport. But the Activate Berry County is for a study, seconding everything she has said, that would bring many commissions, many projects under one roof and do a proper study. So hopefully you'll consider that as some of the facts that we see from the census numbers from 2009, information from 2019 and 20 shows that many families are at a reduced price lunch for students. This is something that everyone should consider. It's not just us in the room, it's all the children of the county that are affected. And if you're on a reduced lunch, your participation in the classroom is different than people that are able to afford their own lunches. And this addresses that. It addresses a market for the farmers year-round, and also the availability as part of the project in here was the why on the fly of delivering good food to people also. So I hope you can consider that, and that this is a huge project and it does need the planning. So thank you for all your comments, and I second her.
Thank you. Is there further public comment?
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Jim Blake, and I live on Algonquin Lake. I appreciate you letting me have this opportunity to speak to you today in support of the Algonquin Lake area $14,000 feasibility study. Algonquin Lake has 388 lots, which are owned by 323 property owners with an estimated 969 residents. Of that, that percentage is 24% of the Rutland Township residents. However, the watershed itself affects many more residents of the township and the county. The overall purpose of what we're seeking is to improve and preserve the lake and the watershed area for future generations. In addition, we intend to look at the feasibility to co-locate high-speed internet conduit with the sewer to vastly improve high-speed internet to the area. We realize the county is addressing the internet issue and would like to work with them to address the Algonquin issues. There have been attempts in the past to address the sewage issue. We think this is the right time to address the issue as one of the tenets of the federal, state, and local ARPA expenditures is to improve infrastructure and internet access. Rutland Charter Township has agreed to be the fiduciary for the administration of these funds if granted. There is a group of residents that stand ready to assist the township after the study is completed to help determine the next steps in the process. In addition, we have letters of support from the YMCA, the Algonquin Lake Association, and Rutland Township. The completion of the feasibility study will provide the roadmap for improving the quality and clarity of Algonquin Lake, the surrounding watershed, and lead to much better internet service. I can only ask you to please approve the $14,000 grant. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Is there further public comment?
Gary White, Nashville. I'm going to go back to what I said in the first public comment. You have some immediate needs for the county. Can the first round ARPA funds be used to help out the Thornapple matter and its concerns? Can the health department be helped out in the first round? Second round may be too late. So that's the reason I said. On the two water towers, do they have a water base rate? Have the townships that are requesting these, have they done their due process? And are you going to make sure that they also have future plans to take care of something? Do they have a water base rate which pays? Do they have a water capital improvement fund? And is it appropriate amounts? These are some things I'm glad to hear Vivian saying that 2-3 weeks we're going to look into more of these things. So we're not here to approve today or in the next week, but you might be here ready to do some things. If they haven't done things, should you put some things in place before you accept these things? Does that hold them accountable for their systems? Am I against all these projects? No. Am I against the amounts? The Village of Nashville did not get contacted appropriately, as you said, so that was something personal to a personal email is not contact. So they missed out. They were expecting to put something in there. So when you said Yankee Springs missed out also, these things did happen first time around. Needs to be addressed. Did you get any private businesses that were, So how do you really get all this stuff done is the bigger question. And once again, is your foot on the gas pedal? Are you looking at the county needs first with county funds? And the manor is countywide, I think. Health department is countywide, I think. If they have these true needs, could these ARPA funds help that out? And are these immediate needs over future needs? Thanks.
Thank you. Is there further public comment?
Joel, Rutland Township. I have some concerns, but they're questions based on all of the projects. Would this be the appropriate time for that, or would that be?
I will yield for a question. We will attempt to answer all questions submitted to, or questions submitted to commissioners in the next section. So if you have a question, now's the time to ask it, and we'll ask it for you.
I will wait. Now is the time to ask it?
We will ask it for you.
Okay. My question, and this part of this would be, I think, probably all of it towards the attorney then. If you read the act, you'll see a section called Transfer Authority. A metropolitan city non-entitlement unit of government or county receiving payment from funds made available, county, I should have emphasized that, receiving payment of funds made available under this section may transfer funds to a private nonprofit organization, a public benefit corporation involved in the transportation of passengers or cargo, or, not and, or a special purpose unit of state or local government. My question, given that clause, are we permitted to give it to general units of government, such as townships, rather than special purpose? Under the National League of Cities, on some things that they had, they gave an example of a special purpose unit of state or local government as a mosquito control authority. That is one question. Second question, if you go to, and this involves more than one townships or more than one request, so I'll ask this here. There's more than one water tower project that is being looked at, and in the final rule, as I read it, and they may have changed it again, who knows, they stated that we needed to follow the guidance from the DWSRF, the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, in order to spend this money appropriately. And in the DWSRF, it states that we cannot use this money to fund expansion in infrastructure for future growth, that it must be used to meet existing needs. I have that on my phone if you need that for, if you want to look at that for reference. In the Berry Township Water Tower, nothing against Berry Township, but it states right in the application, it's for future growth. I have another question. I don't have the time, so I'll yield.
Thank you. We'll see that those questions are answered as soon as we can. Is there further public comment?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I'm Allison Troyer Wiswell, City of Hastings resident. Apologies that I wasn't able to be at the public forum, but I was watching virtually and taking it all in. I applaud your processes as well as the task force process in these recommendations. Certainly the pandemic has taught us that stability and the things we've come to count on, like regular employment and consistent national food supply chain, can change within a blink of an eye. The pandemic has revealed the frailty of our national food system and called us to consider how we can strengthen and develop our stronger systems locally to support our community members and our producers. Through outreach programs and distribution over the course of the past year and a half, we've learned from folks that transportation and cost of healthy foods were barriers reported during the pandemic. We learned that our community is strong in their desire to help each other, and our volunteer spirit is alive and well. We know that Berry County is a strong agricultural community and that we have great pride in what we produce. In the course of this project, I've learned that Michigan is one of the top states in the country to be able to produce the greatest variety of produce, only second to California. I think that's a point of pride for us. Our community has been working collaboratively to develop solutions to strengthen our local system over the course of the past year and a half. Through outreach during our distributions, our interviews, focus groups, and surveys, we learned that people value their health, would like to see more healthy options readily available, and find increase to access healthy foods. The community determined priorities of mobile outreach to expand connectivity to those in need, expanded opportunities to learn healthy cooking skills, desire to have space created to allow production and distribution of meals within our county, like our Meals on Wheels program for seniors. Space to allow community members to try out and grow their small business ideas and receive small business training as well to set them up for success. Additionally, the space could allow for a year-round market to sell goods without having to be present all the time. This is a concern that we heard from farmers as we did interviews, that their time is precious, and we know time spent on the farm is one of the highest commodities for farmers. So what are the ways in which we can expand their revenue systems and support them, as well as get them back to their farms? Please consider the recommendation to work towards the development of a community food center to strengthen our local food system in Berry County for generations to come.
Thank you. Is there further public comment?
Ted DeVries, Prairieville Township. Once again, I'd like to say thank you to the committee for all the hard work that they did. And I've given you all a lot of questions to ask in public comment at the last few meetings, so hopefully you all wrote those down and we'll question the committee on certain things. I did notice that with the agenda that the total doesn't match up with the 6 million, and I didn't know if that's an issue or not, and exactly what the board is going to do as far as the Watson Drain District for Jim Dahl. Once again, what affects Prairieville Township and also Berry Township is the fact that the the amount that we're paying for the Watson Drain District not only affects those people in the Watson Drain District, but our entire township. So just want to make sure that those questions are asked. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there further public comment?
Sally Schuster-Schaff, Rutland Township. I just want to address the fact that the food center that the Blue Zones are proposing is an immediate need. The COA for our Meals on Wheels, we have to contract outside of the county. Having a source, a kitchen where we can produce our own meals for all of our congregate dining and for our Meals on Wheels would bring all that money back into the county. We would not be spending it outside. We would also be paying for people to work in the kitchen to provide for us. So I see it as an immediate need, not just a future need. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further public comment?
Good morning. I'm Janine
Morning.
Dahlman, and I'm with Pennock Hospital in Hastings. And I just wanted to make the case again with Blue Zones and the work that's being done there. We've been partnered for quite some time now, and it is such a county-wide initiative. You know, a lot of the things that we're doing as a healthcare system is in the area of prevention. And so we have started doing culinary medicine programming, and currently that is virtual. But in the future, we would like to see that roll out into a larger space where we could do those classes at some place like the Food Hub and partner with the local farmers markets and the things that are happening here. So I just wanted to thank you for your time and thank the committee for the work that's been done behind the scenes.
Thank you. Is there further public comment? Hearing none, we're going to move into a short recess, then we're going to go to our final questions, and we're going to land this plane. Without objection, we're going to stand at recess for 5 minutes.
Better do it before you go.
Guys, we're almost home.
Top of the night.
Committee will come to order. Let's go to the next slide, Luella. Task Force questions and answers. You can see the packet of the submissions at berrycounty.org/ARPA. Next slide, please. These are just some of the categories kind of in the realm. If you have process questions, these are the specific items, and if you have questions that were on projects that were not listed or omitted, you can ask that. We're not going to go and ask all of these individually. We're just going to go to commissioners, and if you have questions on this, we'll have somebody from the task force to come up. So if we could have some representative of the task force come up, we'll get into questions.
We're not going to take them individually?
Well, if you have a question, any of these categories you can ask, and then we'll move on to the other commissioners.
Any of, you mean, when you say categories, what do you mean?
So let me ask the board this. Do you want to do questions in this order or just go individually for commissioners?
Smart guys.
Based on how it was set up on the agenda, I thought we would make a recommendation for approval, have a debate, have a discussion about individual projects, get the questions answered, approve.
The challenge is the first project that gets funded affects the next one. So if you approved a $2 million project first, well, I guess it's all $6 million. What are the board's wishes? Do we want to make a motion then deliberate on them?
I guess if somebody has a question on a project, but then I think we need to.
Sure, mic on.
It's not.
Let's open it up. Does anybody have questions on process?
I wanted to know about, the only thing.
Go ahead, Ms.
No, that's not, that's about the projects, not process.
Okay.
Well, maybe.
All right. Berry Township Water Tower. Now, let me go back. I do have a process question. How do we eliminate conflict of interest in making these recommendations? I know that we have a lot of individuals that wear multiple hats, but some of our constituents had concerns.
So I think what you would have to really look at is what you would constitute as a conflict of interest. And I think, Mark, you would agree with me on that. So one of the things that was brought up is that the Berry Community Foundation holds a fund for Activate Berry County. And we're considered a fiscal sponsor for that fund. Now, I don't make, nor do I sit on that particular committee that works for the food hub. I don't know that holding a fund would constitute a conflict of interest. Mark, what would you say to that? Being a fiscal, because honestly, if a fiscal sponsorship or holding a fund for an organization, or then I would also have a conflict of interest with anything to do with Parks and Rec. I would also have a conflict of interest with anything to do with the United Way, with the Economic Alliance, with the
We have
YMCA.
recycling.
Recycling. I mean, there's 355 different funds that are held under the Community Foundation's umbrella. And so I don't know how you would feel about that. Now, if that truly constitutes a conflict of interest on whether or not I have the ability to make a recommendation, then actually, as a chairperson, you would have no vote
Okay.
on a specific committee. So take my points out of the mix, and you still have the same ranking. So I would 100% say, take it out. I'm good with that.
Okay.
It was really, for me, it was about the process. In a community this size, having someone that isn't somehow connected to something is going to be a little hard. But certainly could be doable. I also want to say I am not convinced that I'm willing to do this for a second round.
Any other questions on process? So you're saying, Bonnie, if I hear you correctly, the community foundation's whole modus operandi is you have these funds that you hold, but it's not like a business portfolio. It's
Well, what it's like is having a bank and a checking account, right? So what we do for Blue Zones is we are the fiscal sponsor. So when they get a grant approval or an award, then it comes into their fund that only they can touch, and they only are the ones that have the ability to make any recommendations for distributions or expenditures from. Our board has the final approval just to make sure that it meets all of the IRS rules and responsibilities. We also pay bills for them, so we act as essentially their checking account.
Thank you. John? Go ahead, John.
I guess all these other affiliates has their own board of directors. Are you on them?
No.
They're the ones that, the board of directors are the ones that says what bills to pay, right?
I am on a steering committee, just in full disclosure. I'm on a steering committee for Blue Zones to listen to reports that come in, but I don't serve on their executive committee, and I don't serve on any type of board that makes a decision about fiduciary end of game type of things.
And there was some on the advisory board that did not vote on some of these
That is
things,
correct.
right?
Yep. So for instance, Lanny recused herself from the Freeport conversation.
I am.
And 911, I'm sorry.
And I am on the Food Center board.
And Jennifer removed herself from that as well.
Okay.
So in the future, what we could do is what we do with all of our committees and our board. at the foundation level, which is where we provide every single member with a conflict of interest statement, where they literally have to write where they may be affiliated and where they would have a conflict, and we would put that on record with, that would be my recommendation, to put that on record with the county, so that the county would be aware in the clerk's office where a conflict of interest might lie.
Great. Sorry, I missed that. Mr. Nettleton had something that we need to look into moving forward. Any other questions on process?
I do. I have a question on, and I didn't find an answer about the studies. We have the food bank is a study, and also the Algonquin Lake Sewer and Broadband is a study. And it's a study which hopefully both of these will lead to boots on the ground, a project.
Yeah.
So is there a problem with using this money for studies?
I guess that's since a study is actually part of a project, it is a acceptable use of the funds. Was that your interpretation?
Our interpretation is that to be able to actually have a shovel-ready project, of any shovel-ready project, you must be able to prove the feasibility of the long-term project, and that generally is done with a consultant in a feasibility study. So that was our thought process on that. Mark, I don't know if you have another. He's looking through some other things.
I do have questions on studies versus projects too that I'll get specifically into this.
And I think that's the issue that you have in a small rural community. If you want to be able to have opportunities for your townships and for your other out-of-county townships and municipalities to be able to participate and to be able to further their economic viability, they've got to be able to have access to some of these, to money to be able to create the shovel-ready projects. And even in visiting I went and visited with the Village Township, and we sat and talked about all the studies that they already have done and prioritizing need, and really understanding where they are and what's happening. I think one of the things that really became evident to me personally as part of this committee was the issues of watershed and water quality in our community, in the entire county, that I had no idea existed, because why would I need to know that, right? But I think the important part about that is that this process has really opened the eyes of many people about the unfairness of federal funding to smaller units of government. And I just one more time want to applaud the county government for
Well, that's what we're trying to do,
to-
like places like my hometown of Woodland,
Yeah.
where we haven't had a economic development strategy in, 50, 60 years.
Right.
Talking with them about this opportunity is just a game changer.
It is.
Moving forward today, are there, because of some of the questions that we have and don't have answers for, are there any of these projects that you would like to not discuss today and wait till we have some more concrete answers?
Based on what we said before, that we are comfortable moving forward, and that none of the federal changes or questions dissuaded us from moving forward. It's my intention just to vote on these.
Can I say one last thing, Ben?
Yes. Hold on just a second. Does that answer your question?
No. Well, I mean, it did answer my question, but not how I wanted. How's that?
Appreciate your honesty.
I get that a lot in here.
Yeah, Bonnie.
Welcome to marriage, Vivian. What I did want to say was that the committee gave you a recommendation. And a recommendation simply means that we gave you a starting point. That's all this was. We invited some folks to give us their ideas. We gave you an idea. Now you have the opportunity to tweak the idea into something that makes sense. So if you think that maybe it would be more appropriate if the bonds haven't already been issued, for instance, in Prairieville, to move some money around so that Prairieville gets money for the drain district that they're asking for, then move the money around. That is your role as the county commissioners. We're not coming here to tell you what to do. We're saying we reviewed this is our recommendation, and good luck with the final decisions.
Well, all of your work is valuable, and I will say I would like to see some small tweaks for round two going forward, reaching out to places that either didn't hear about it or didn't get notification or weren't prepared to submit the application in time. Just making an effort to reach out to them. Any other questions on process? Hearing none, we'll move forward to the Barry Water Tower. And to do that, we will have a motion on the floor. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to allocate up to $1,332,000 in ARPA funds for a water tower in Barry Township, subject to appropriate contractual approval with the applicant.
So moved, Jackson.
Support, Gibson.
The motion is made by Jackson, supported by Gibson. Discussion.
I got a question on that. It was brought up here at public comment that it is for making it bigger, for the town to be bigger. Is that?
Expansion.
Expansion, thank you.
Expansion
Is
of the
that
service?
okayed? If it is, I'm fine with it.
There were references in letters of support and in the application on a limited basis, but those, I think you can't give weight to that because growth may or may not be a result of a water tower, but they have contaminated wells, they have an outdated water system, they have a school that they're in the process of renovating that they can't provide sprinkler services for because they don't have water pressure. So they're telling them you can renovate the school, but at the current pace, they have 30-some hydrants in the city that are inoperable, around Delton because they can't have water pressure. They would literally drain the city of water within minutes. So it's something that would growth happen as a result of providing a better environment? Probably. But that's not the reason that the water tower needs to be addressed.
Just like a food hub would benefit the growth of the area. Second of all, you can't deny that I've thought about this question too. You can't deny that it is a water project. I mean, it's a structure that holds hundreds of thousands of gallons of water. The fact that it has secondary benefits was not an issue before the loosening of the regulations. I think the point is moot.
Isn't there a thing, though, when you work on your water systems, doesn't the state make you go a certain percentage larger than you need?
Right.
Am I?
That's correct. Yes.
Thank you.
So if I can, so there was a question in public comment about, to the point about, can a sewer water infrastructure project serve, growth? And the original interim final rule said, essentially, no, you cannot serve growth. You have to do this project in accordance with the state revolving fund programs for sewer and water. Those programs generally say no growth. One of the changes with the final rule basically was, again, to expand that use to say serving population growth is not an ineligible use, but certain factors have to be met and found to be able to serve that. So that's something that Barry Township has to demonstrate to us, to the county, and comply with under the rule. As I mentioned earlier, we need to have a contract with the subrecipient. And to respond to another point that was made at public comment, this rule and the original statute does allow for transfers by the county to units of government, local government, like a village, like a township. So there is not a prohibition on that.
And that's what I was in the back talking with Mark and Michael about, that we needed to add that to these motions.
So in the contract, we have to have Berry Township basically say that we're going to comply with these requirements under the rule with respect to being able to allow this project to serve growth.
Hold on, Mr. Bauer? Does your township have the financial capability and the intention of building into your budget maintenance for this structure?
We're building in for the budget for maintaining it, yes.
Great.
Do we want to approve this before we know, or what is your current population, or how, if you do it by parcel or how you do it? I'm not exactly sure. Is it by house? And if you need a water tower for, 118, is that it? Okay, it was sticking in my mind. Thank you. I actually remembered something. What is the water tower going to, what is its capacity for households? And are you within these guidelines that Mr. Nettleton talked about?
Nowhere in the guidelines for what he's talking about. How much the residents use, I'm not real sure.
No, I meant, but is the water tower built to serve, like if we are talking 118, will the water tower, is it the capacity that you're talking about building to serve 150 or 200, or, and is it within those guidelines that I was?
So before.
If you don't know, I would totally get that, but do we want to wait until we're certain?
Well, the language that we just added to the end of these motions anticipates those questions. So subject to appropriate contractual approval with the applicant means that we have to meet all of the guidelines that are required.
We or they?
We
The
both do.
applicant. Okay, both, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a question.
Yeah, it is a good question. That's what this time is for. Any other questions on the Berry Water Tower? What are the board's wishes?
Let them ask.
Real quick, what's your question?
If you say that they already have contaminated wells and fire hydrant stuff not working, is part of this money going to go for drilling new wells and cleaning up the, or capping off the old ones and replacing fire hydrant stuff? Or is this just strictly for a water tower?
The question was, since it was off camera, is this strictly for a water tower? Is it strictly for a water tower?
So you're still going to have the contaminated wells feeding the water tower? And
No, our contaminated wells have all been capped off. We put our wells out by Prairieville, or out by Pleasant Lake. They've been out there since 1995.
Great. Before we go any farther, before I forget, Mr. Ibbotson had a question for Mr. Nettleton, and I don't think it'd be appropriate to skip over that or wait until we had voted on this. You want to share the answer to his question?
So there were two questions. It was, can the county transfer funds to other local units of government? The answer is yes. And with respect to serving population growth, we addressed that.
Yeah,
So
we did address that.
It's both in the rule, the final rule, as well as the supplemental information in terms of the ability to serve population.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us address that. Are there any other questions on the Berry Township Water Tower? Excited about this project, aren't you?
We sure are.
All right.
It's only been since 2002.
It's a long time ago. I was in high school then. That was almost 20 years ago. I mean,
Here's Mike off.
I'm going to stop talking before I sink this whole project. So there being no, is there further discussion?
Yes, I have not seen a resolution. Was it in our packet? a sample resolution of how we would address these?
I don't know how to answer that. Our whole time that we've been here today is how we would address these.
No, but you said there's been language added to a resolution.
No, I said language added to these motions.
Oh, these motions, I'm sorry, I thought you said a resolution.
No.
My apologies.
No
I
problem.
still don't like, though, not knowing the answers before I approve it.
Mr. Chair.
Maybe I can address that for a minute. Mark and I have been talking, and what we need is effectively some acknowledgement that you want to move forward with this project. We will then take and begin to put in place the contracts that are necessary that have to come back. As we think about that process and how we make sure that, as Mark talked about, we meet our responsibilities. As we engage subrecipients, we make sure that they meet their responsibilities on our behalf. One of the mechanisms with regard to water projects is the Board of Public Works. So you're used to, by the time it gets to the Board of Public Works, the local municipality has done a lot of the homework, including figuring out the rates and those types of things, doing that analysis, working with an engineer, working with a potential finance advisor. That all needs to get done, and this will begin that process of us being able to work with, to reach out to the township and say, here's the requirements that we need to put in place. So yeah, this is kind of the easy part.
There is a degree of uncertainty that we...
Details are all yet to come, so...
So for clarification for those of you out there, why I'm asking these questions is because I sit on the Board of Public Works. So that's where I'm thinking. So, okay, thank you, Michael, I appreciate that.
Good questions today.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Now, this is a cow. Is this going to, when we do this, does this get moved to a board meeting?
If it's unanimous, it'll be under consent agenda.
Are we giving them enough time to come up with the contracts, or don't we need them for the consent agenda?
We wouldn't be able to move forward until a contract was presented. So it would just be like a motion saying authorize the chair to sign it. Until I signed it, the motion wouldn't be carried out.
Yeah, this is sort of a tentative approval of the process subject to then. And that, some of the contracts may come, they're not all going to come at the same time, and certainly not all going to come within the next even 30 days.
No.
Is my guess. We'll do our best, but now that we start to, again, the details are...
So will it be a motion to approve now, or at the next board meeting, or will it be once all the...
I think you could take
What are you
this same
saying?
set of
Okay.
this tentative approval.
It's stating the board's intention.
That's exactly it, to go to the board meeting, and then from there, we will, again, begin to work with all the municipalities. We'll figure out the proper contracts that need to be put in place.
Be like a motion to offer a job position to somebody. If they took it, they took it. If they didn't, they didn't. So there are a degree of uncertainties, but it's the board's intention to move forward with it.
May I ask one more question?
Yes.
Would it have to go to consent agenda, or could we ask that it go to items for consideration in case there is a question that might come up?
I don't see any issue with it going to consent agenda because it does not appropriate money. It's the intention of appropriating money.
I get
The
that.
Board
I
of
just asked
Commission-
if it could. That was my
Well,
question.
you would have the right to remove an item from consent agenda and place it under items for
I
consideration.
do understand that, but I just thought, rather than amend an agenda.
Yeah, so this is the intention of spending money. The contract would still have to be approved by the Board of Commissioners. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the question before the committee is a recommendation to allocate up to $1,332,000 in ARPA funds for a water tower in Berry Township, subject to appropriate contractual approval with the applicant. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Chairman Geiger,
Yeah.
I do want to let you know that Ms. Heinzman has a board meeting at 12:30, so she's going to be leaving us.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners allocation of up to $839,000 in ARPA funds for a water tower and supply upgrades in the Village of Freeport, subject to appropriate contractual approval with the applicant.
I'll make that motion.
Support?
Motion is made by Gibson, supported by Smelker. Discussion? The only question I have on this is, is there a deficiency in it? Why wasn't it addressed earlier? Is this just something a long time that they couldn't afford? Or
So
what?
in the application, yes, it has been something that has continued to be an issue. But in the application, if you look at the amount that was pending or the amount that they were requesting, part of it was water coming from their water capital outlay fund, I believe $75,000 if I remember correctly. I also know that they have completed a water rate study, and they were in the process of doing that when they applied for these funds.
Okay.
So
you have complete confidence that the Village of Freeport will be able to maintain these upgrades and fully utilize the system?
Well, that's their intention with
Mhm.
the upgrade, with the water rate study that they did, and I believe at their next meeting, they will be making a motion to approve the new water rate study. So
That's great.
It would appear, based on their last committee of the whole
Mhm.
meeting, that that is correct.
So they're going to have the funding to pay for the upgrades or to operate,
I believe
maintain
their
it.
application also stated that there was a maintenance agreement that, I don't have the application in front of me, but I believe that there's a maintenance agreement so that this would not become an issue going forward, that they were.
Yeah, that was the biggest really concern that I got on these infrastructure upgrades was, are they needed because of poor maintenance? I'm not picking on the Village of Freeport, but
So
did
in
somebody
this-
not budget for something a long time ago?
Yeah, it says, once the repairs are completed, a maintenance agreement will be entered into that will ensure the system never gets into this shape again.
Great.
It was part of their grant application. Thank you.
Perfect. Any other discussions? Discussion. Hearing none, the question before the committee is to recommend the Board of Commissioners allocation of up to $839,000 in ARPA funds for water tower and supply upgrades in the Village of Freeport, subject to appropriate contractual approval with the applicant. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners allocation up to $2,400,000 in ARPA funds for a 800 megahertz tower, subject to appropriate contractual approval with the applicant.
So moved.
Support, Jackson.
Motion is made by Smelker, supported by Jackson. Discussion? My only question is, and then come to Vice Chair Connor, where's it going to be located?
According to the application, Stephanie's going to step up here, but according to the application, there have been several studies that have been done, and there will look at a couple of different sites, and the best site for the location would be where it was placed.
Okay. Vice Chair Connor?
I see.
You're going to
there-
say not outside your window.
No, amount leveraged, I didn't see anything there. What's the 911 fund balance?
Yeah, are we going to be leveraging any funds for this tower?
Because I see the cost is quite a bit more than
If you
the
could
amount,
come
there's
up.
an amount remaining of close to $1 million.
Support and maintenance, so entering into a contract with the MPSCS for support and maintenance of the site moving forward will become the responsibility of the 911 authority to the tune of about $10,000 per year.
Okay.
So obviously, all of the equipment, all the civil engineering, the steel, the concrete, there'll be a warranty that runs for a certain period of time on all of that. Obviously, that's incredibly important when you're entering into contracts of this magnitude that are of technological advancements. And so when the equipment starts to age out, is when we'll have to start to look at a different support and maintenance agreement. But for the first 10 years, we'll be okay. But oversight fees will be to the tune of about $10,000 a year. That will become the responsibility of the 911 authority.
Okay, but you're not going to leverage any money against the actual structure and the building of the tower itself?
At this time, we do not have any plan to do so. We could reevaluate that. So our current fund balance is, by the time we're finished paying with our construction, is about 55%. So of 1 year of operation.
Which is,
A touch less than a million. So.
are
Should buy half a
you
tower.
answering,
I want to
another-
add to that,
Oh,
we
okay.
also are paying down our unfunded liability. So there isn't a lot of extra money out there in fund balance. That's why we're asking for pretty much the whole thing here.
I want to jump in here because
It's good,
I'm
good
afraid
answers.
I'm afraid that I don't have all the answers on the cost of system upgrades. You chair the finance committee for 911. There's a lot of expensive upgrades, I'm sure, coming down the pike. Are you comfortable with this strategy and not using fund balance for this tower?
Yes, I am, especially with the unfunded liabilities we have and upgrades to other electronics in the building that we have to maintain, which are in our,
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
Chairperson Geiger? So actually tomorrow, the 19th, we're starting research on our recording system, our logging system, which is incredibly important. Everything that we do at 911 is recorded. And so all facets of public safety, including the public in terms of FOIA, the prosecutor, defense attorneys, everybody utilizes recordings and resources that are received, that are held at 911. Our current system was end of life and end of support the end of 2020.
It's not something you want to hear in a 911 dispatch center.
Right, so we're doing okay. Like
Yeah.
we're getting by with it.
Yeah, I don't-
Total overhaul of this upgrade. So obviously these systems have changed since 2009 when this happened. Is going to average, depending upon what we choose to go with, about $250,000 all the way up to about $500,000, $500,000. So just depends on what our need is and what the 911 board approves.
As my friend Larry Bass would say, I ask these questions not to criticize, but to seek enlightenment.
Not to mention, let me throw another log on that fire. The current VHF system that we use to page or tone.
Again, bad and
Yep, all fire and EMS agencies in Berry County. That system, last overhaul on that when some narrow banding was done, so the last work that was done on that system was 2008. So when that system was put in place, it started in 2005, finished in 2008, and at that time, in 2008, when new equipment was being put in, it was already obsolete. So to overhaul that entire system, should fire and EMS choose to stay on VHF, is going to be about $750,000.
that's what we're going to.
One other thing I'd like to bring up.
Please.
Berry County is the 8th largest growing county in the state of Michigan right now, and I had that study in front of me and I didn't bring, so we've had to increase staff. Up until 2020, we were working with the same staffing model that we had since 1992, but we had more than quadrupled the number of calls and complaints that we were dispatching yearly. So in addition to updating the building that was desperately needed, most of the building was in its original form from 1992. We had to create a place. We had to increase workstations so I could have the opportunity to have more dispatchers working at a time. But I had to find those dispatchers too. And so that's what our fund balance has been allocated towards. So at this time, Vice Chair Connor, we are not intending to allocate towards this. But if
All
we
good
needed
answers.
to, we could probably pinch a little bit of something from somewhere.
Well, they're all good answers.
Thank you
I
for
just needed
for
an
sharing.
update.
Mr. Getty?
I had a question from a constituent. Is there any other grant funding available for this project?
So public safety communications in Michigan are a little bit different than they are other places. And so this tower, so the current 800 platform that we're on, the state owns it, the MPSCS. And so there are very strict and stringent rules that you have to follow and comply with to be a part of that radio system.
If you want to pull up a chair.
So 800 megahertz technology has been around for a while, but it's not getting any cheaper. And so the real answer that I have to that question, the short answer is, I don't know, because you might be able to get a partial grant for part of the technology, but not for the steel, not for the civil engineering, not for the concrete. We've got to find, we either have to enter into some type of leasing agreement or purchase agreement for the land. There's a lot of processes that need to happen before this tower will actually be erected. So maybe for some components of it, but for it to officially become a part of the state system, no. And the state doesn't build towers anymore. So.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Mr. Jackson?
This map was included in the application. I see we have one tower in eastern Berry County, and you said that tower was built by
The MPS, yes, the state of Michigan.
Okay.
In 1998.
in 1998.
1998.
Okay.
Mhm.
On the far eastern border of Berry County.
Correct.
Not really a good strategic location for a tower, it wouldn't seem.
And at that time, the state's engineering behind that, because the entire MPS system, so all of those radio sites are a simulcast system. So there are different zones. You see the shadings of the different colors in that system. And what that means is all those towers are essentially talking or communicating with each other at the time. So when the state came up with the plan, they knew that public safety telecommunications was a giant need in our state. The state determined what utilities were going to go where for the best leverage. Unfortunately, Commissioner Jackson, I wasn't here at that time. So I can't answer those specific questions about why it went there, but that's where they chose to put it.
Well, you look at Allegan County with 8 or 9 towers and Berry County with 1, it appears that we're well behind the 8 ball on this.
So Allegan County did an 800 megahertz infrastructure build out, which is something that we will eventually have to do here in Berry County. We have the 1 site, but we have a need for 6 or 7. I know you've heard me say that before. Our topography is a little bit tricky with the hills and the water. So land mobile radio coverage with water is hard. We have over 300 main bodies of water in the county. Allegan County 911 is a true county agency. They're a little bit different than we are in the sense that 911 has its authority board and authority rules that come with that. So the county of Allegan did an 800 megahertz infrastructure build out. I think they were finished in like 2018 or 19, and they built all 8 or 9 of those sites. The 1 site that we currently have here in Berry County is owned by the state of Michigan, not by Berry County or 911.
Is that current tower going to be converted to 800 megahertz as well?
It already is.
Already is,
So
okay.
what we will do is if we are able to secure the funding for this additional tower, we will put what's called simulcast technology on the site that we're going to build. So those 2 sites will talk to each other, so they'll be simulcast ready instead of what's called an ASR site or standalone site. That will also give us room for future expansion if we're able to come up with grant funding or if we have to have special request funding or whatever for the future sites that we know that we need. That will actually save us several $100,000 per site to have both those sites already simulcast and ready to go.
Okay.
Meaning they'll all communicate and talk to each other.
And if this is approved, when would something like this be able to actually be shovel ready? Is this a year out, 2 years out?
2.
2 years out.
I would say 2 at a minimum.
So we are behind on this by a ways, so.
Incredibly.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Further discussion? Hearing none, the question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners allocation of up to $2,400,000 in ARPA funds for a 800 megahertz tower, subject to appropriate contractual approval with the applicant. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next up, Commissioner Getty, I think you wanted to introduce this motion.
Yeah, I would like to move to spend $1 million, to allocate $1 million for the Paul Henry Trail paving project.
This would be a substitute motion. Is there a second for the purpose of discussion?
I'll support.
Commissioner, would you like to share with the board why you believe this amount should be increased from $650,000 to $1 million?
There's, of all the projects, I think this one is the most accessible to our residents. This will be
Literally,
public.
it's a trail outside.
It's a trail outside, and we've seen an increase in people wanting to get outside as a reaction to the pandemic and health effects. We've long known that we wanted to provide connectivity in the Paul Henry Thornapple Trail. It will provide a tremendous amount of economic impact to the village of Nashville. I would expect that the village of Nashville would experience the benefits that the village of Middleville has seen with the Paul Henry Trail expansion on that end of the trail. It will also serve over a mile of trail near Thornapple Manor and the new Manor residents, which will be a benefit for them, their families, a place for them to get outside and visit with family and friends. The other reason is that there is a $500,000 max on DNR trust fund allocations for improvement development projects, and I'm sure that Mr. Patton could speak to that as well.
Yeah, Dan, we're going to have some questions.
The grant, DNR grant, is a double-edged sword. Probably a 3, maybe plus year extension of implementation if we go through DNR trust fund development grant. Through the application process is approximately a year. And then there are increase in design standards that the Village of Midville, for instance, had to upgrade their bridge development. So in terms of being able to get this trail paved, these connections made from the Eaton County line through Nashville to Greg's Crossing, the Thornapple Manor, Berry County Christian School section, and the Thornapple Township section, we could get this done, I think, with $1 million allocation from our ARPA funds to a county department with Parks and Rec, with some additional assistance from those communities that are where the trail goes through. So the Village of Nashville could be approached, as well as Hastings Township, Castleton Township, and Thornapple Township to get us over that finish line, that 1.2 finish line.
Right. So I'm in my head, we would have had motion for 150 first, and then talked about an amendment to $1 million. But for this process, we're just going to proceed like this is the amendment, and if it fails, we'll go back to making a motion for the 650. So my question is to you, Dan. Why is it beneficial to the taxpayers that we put an extra $350,000 above the ARPA task force allocation to this project?
Well, I think if you look back at our original estimations, I have them somewhere, I think it was, the original request was for 1.2. It's still going to take
I haven't.
It's still going to take the 1.2 to get there, but we think there is some opportunity to maybe make that money up in some other areas, as Catherine mentioned, potentially talking with the other units, local units of government where the funding runs through. One of the, I think it was mentioned something earlier about shovel ready. I would say, looking at the list, ours is ready. I mean, we've been waiting for this for a while now, honestly. There are some opportunities to potentially apply for some grant funding. It does complicate things even beyond what the ARPA funds are. It is a project that obviously is of service to all Berry County citizens. And you know, our park system is the one thing that really can be used by everybody.
Yeah, we are a recreation destination.
I mean, so there, I think the investment piece is long overdue for this particular type project, and I think I think we're in a good position to take it on right now, and certainly I think it'd be beneficial for the park system and the county overall.
So you're saying that you'd like to take this opportunity to put in more of the trail, pretty much.
Not so much put in more of the trail, but actually improve what's already there. The trail system's there. I think we're trying to make it accessible for everybody to use. As Commissioner Getty mentioned, you know, just the amount of additional use we've seen over the last 24-month period is really unbelievable in terms of trying to put a measurement to the number of additional people that are utilizing the facilities. Our challenge is making those facilities available for everyone.
Right.
And we're not doing that. Berry County's not doing that. And we're certainly not doing it as an agency, and this is one of the ways to
to fix that problem.
What are the board's wishes? This is the first, and Commissioner Getty had approached me about this issue and her desire to do it. What are the board's wishes about increasing the allocation?
I just have a follow-up question
Yeah,
on
go
that.
ahead.
So, Catherine or Dan, either one, are we talking about getting more land to lengthen the trail or just pave what you already have?
This is, and either one of us can answer, but these are all Berry County publicly owned sections of trail. These are trails we have now that are grass and gravel in various degrees of accessible to able-bodied folks. I would say some of them are marginal with folks with any kind of limitations, physical limitations, or pushing a stroller. But these are all currently owned sections of trail owned by Berry County.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Connor?
Just kind of need a clarification here. Catherine talked about the grant application through the Department of Natural Resources.
You have some experience there?
But,
Vivian
and she
retired from
said
there.
that they may need some more studies for like bridges and crossings and things like that, but Dan is saying it's shovel ready.
So here's the difference. If you want to, which I'm not saying we won't apply for some additional grant dollars, but it changes the entire scope in terms of the requirement for the county, and it's money. Quite frankly, we can take the $1 million as shovel ready, and the money's going to go further than if we try to apply for a grant, because the grant's going to have additional requirements required by the state, requirements that we're already going to meet. So we're already going to meet the AASHTO standards, which is 10, 1 foot shoulder each side, 2 foot buffer beyond that. I mean, we're already meeting those standards. It's the design and engineering requirements from the DNR that we don't want to have to pay for. It's the soft cost.
But you're not going to apply for the grant.
Well, I think that's to be determined.
Yeah, I think that's to be determined. And the maximum is actually only $300,000.
Oh, for the DNR grant?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I know
On
we
the
were talking
development side.
500, so.
So it comes down to, if you believe in the project, are you willing to invest more in it?
And I would say in this case, more from the ARPA funds means more trail developed.
Right. And the question for this board, is that something that we are willing to do? Our ability-wise, I believe that we are under $6 million, and we could make a $350,000 positive change to this project and still be under half, correct?
Based on the projects in front of you right now, yeah.
Okay.
If I get it right, if we move it up to $1 million, you're still going to be 0.2 short, right? And you're going to go to taxpayers in Nashville and stuff to get that 0.2?
Well, I think
How much is it to finish it? I'm not doing that as a proposal. I'm just wondering, how much?
1.2 is a good number, correct. But there are, I mean, beyond the trust fund grant, potentially even beyond talking to the other local municipalities, there are other dollars out there. There's dollars from MDOT, there's dollars from foundations. I mean, it's 1.2 to do the project. And at the rate costs are increasing for everything, it might be more than that tomorrow, John, honestly. I don't know what to tell you.
Are we talking about the same thing? Is this 1.2 to pave it all?
Pave all the sections that
Without, I mean, we have gaps in it.
Yep. To pave our currently owned sections, yes, it is.
I don't know if that's.
I think those, Dan, were those estimates developed through the West Michigan Trails and Greenways? I mean, some engineering expenses for trails that have been undertaken in the last couple of years. So some research was done to come up with that, but we don't have an engineered design for any of these sections.
So
That's my understanding.
Yeah, the cost estimates came both from work that had been done by MDOT locally on trails, and then the other was from the West Michigan Trails group.
What I'm conflicted on is, it seems like when we tackle these projects in gaps, we have to start all over with the consulting, the engineering, and it costs a whole bunch of money to get these grants. Now, I'm bringing this up where this could take away from our ability to fund round 2 projects, but I just wanted to have it out there. What's our best estimate to pave this trail that gets a lot of use out of the county? Mr. Connor?
Best estimate is 1.2.
That's 1.237,500.
That's what it is.
He did recognize me.
Mhm.
He's talking.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I saw that.
Okay, so,
We recognize.
so you said that it paves all the county-owned part of the trail. Is there part of the trail that the county doesn't own that will remain unimproved, let's say, with dirt or gravel or grass?
That the county owns?
That is there part of the Paul Henry Trail that the county doesn't own that won't get paved?
Yeah, if I could jump in, like in Nashville where I walk a lot, there are some privately owned sections where there's not. Who mows those green sections?
From Curtis.
Rick.
I thought it was the homeowners.
If you're talking about the section from Curtis Road to M66, that's all owned by Berry County.
Well, Rick, I apologize.
So, but are there any,
So there are some sections that will remain unimproved
Okay.
that are not owned by Berry County.
Okay.
But there are some other things in the works, I guess is the best way to describe it, with some of the local units and the property owners and or the local units own it. So, I mean, ultimately, yeah, that's the goal. The goal is to make that connection all the way from the village of Nashville to the Kent Trail system in Caledonia.
I just didn't want people thinking, oh, well, why isn't this paved if the county, but that's why I was asking for clarification too.
And we also are in a process of trying to develop a non-motorized trail plan for the county, which looks beyond just that connecting piece, but looks at a connecting piece into Yankee Springs, Gun Lake, looks at connecting into Delton, and ultimately connecting into Woodland. So
Great.
there is additional work going on behind the scenes for a more comprehensive trail system countywide. So
what are the board's wish, Dave?
Yeah, just one more comment. I would encourage you to apply for those grants and to look for other sources of funding, because I'll support the investment of $1 million in county trails. I think being on this board for going on 7 years, county parks have, I don't want to say underinvested in, but they've continued to ask, and it's a pretty tight ship, and there hasn't been an opportunity to do something of this magnitude for the county. Trail improvement is a huge investment in everybody in the county. I think it's worthwhile for us to consider the increase of $1 million. But I would also encourage you to look for those additional funding sources. I know there's going to be additional time and expense in managing those state contracts, but if it's $300,000 or $500,000 in DNR trust fund money, I know trails have typically been something that there's lots of opportunities for grants. They're just hard to get. There's a lot of competition for grants, but it would be a big benefit, I think, for the county to see this go through and completed. So
I think that's a good, personally, I think that's a good balance. We do have up to $1 million that we could dedicate in round 1 funding. And the Parks and Rec Commission, part of their main goals is to seek out and successfully get grants. So we're going to make a lot of improvements with $1 million.
And Commissioner Jackson, part of the reason I would think we will apply for a grant, but the Parks Commission hasn't met to make that determination, and I would say that'll be later this month. And ultimately, if it's a grant through trust fund, land and water, whatever, you guys would see it again anyway because it's required to be
Right.
approved by the highest governing body. So I would say you'll see me in about 2 months.
Okay.
Probably, it would take me personally that whole 2 months to walk that whole trail, paved or not paved. John?
You know, you're talking to someone here that does not use the trails, never have. But being on as long as I have, there is a lot of people that use it. And I know you're going to get shocked here, Ben, but I would go for the 1.2. Yeah.
Without bidding me. This meeting's gone too long.
Yes, it has.
So let me just do a poll of members. Who's, this is an unofficial poll, it's not a vote. Who thinks 1.2? You got,
1.2.
got 3 votes for
Provided-
1.2?
Provided it did not take away from some existing projects here already.
Okay. Who thinks 1?
I do. I think a $350,000 increase is a good increase in what the determination was from the board, so I don't mind supporting that.
I don't have any part of that trail that's near me. I mean, I'd have to drive somewhere to get on it. So I don't use that trail, but I would go to $1 million. But I do want to know what that's going to increase the tally to on all these projects that are listed here.
We would have to push into some round 2 funding.
No, I don't think so.
I think so.
It would be a hair over 6?
If for the 1.2.
No, it wouldn't. We have 350, or 325 in the. Right.
What is it, 325?
Honestly, I'm on the fence.
Michael's getting a calculator.
How does it benefit, how does an extra 200 benefit
So
the
there's-
people in
there's
Nashville?
425,000 that's not listed in that allocation, which is why it didn't total to the 6 million, because of the conversation between the drain commissioner and the letter and the legal rules that we talked about. So there was 425,000 that's not in this agenda.
Okay.
So just clarification.
So Michael's doing a total for us.
I think I'm leaning toward the 1 million because part of this endeavor is we need to seek out grants and opportunities to complete this project. $1 million is a heck of a lot of investment. The extra money, I think, is out there with some hard work.
Well, and if I may speak, while Michael's tabulating, a lot of the smaller units of government, Village of Nashville, I know Thornapple Township is talking about ARPA spending later this week. They haven't, a lot of them have been waiting for this final rule and more guidance. So I think this would be a good time to approach those local units that will benefit from the trail
Right.
going through their communities.
Okay.
I've done my calculation correctly, and again, to Bonnie's point, and that's an excellent one, so where everybody's on the same page, that Watson and Cloverdale
Not included.
aren't included. The allocation would be $5,575,000 if you allocate $650,000 to the trail. You increase that to $1 million, that allocation becomes $5,925,000. And if you go with the 1.2 million, it increases it to $6,125,000. So you would have moved into, 50% of our allocation.
Yeah. I'm more comfortable staying in round 1. Discussion?
I don't want to go outside what we already have received
Yeah.
in round 1.
I agree.
$5,977,683.
$5,977,683.
That's awful close. Any further discussion? We have the question before the committee is to recommend the Board of Commissioners to allocate up to $1 million in ARPA funding for enhancement of the Paul B. Henry Thornapple Trail, subject to appropriate contractual approval with the applicant. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay.
Nay.
The motion passes with one nay vote.
That will be in items for consideration then.
It will be, and it is your right to remove items off the consent agenda into items for consideration.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next, we have the recommendation, at this time, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners allocations of up to $100,000 in ARPA funds for the Activate Berry County Community Food Center project in the city of Hastings, subject to appropriate contractual approval with the applicant.
So moved.
Support. The motion is made by Getty, supported by Gibson. Discussion. I do have a question if Allison is still here.
Still here.
This actually has gotten, surprisingly, I've gotten more feedback on this in my district than a lot of other things. Tell me, is this $100,000 for a study or for bricks and mortar?
It's for a study.
It's for a study. Now, I'm not doing this to be critical, but why wouldn't it be more beneficial to put $100,000 into the project than do a study for it?
Because we want to be certain that we have all of our due diligence done in the front end, because this would be a large project. We did the phase 1 of the study, so we determined an operational model. We did interviews and found that people were very supportive conceptually in our farmers markets and all the various components that would go in. We did look at a cost and financial analysis to look at what that sustainability model would look like and determine viable case studies in like-sized communities that have been going sustainably for 5 years or longer. So at this point, we're looking at market analysis, what the market can hold, right? What are the gaps? Where are we not competing with other businesses that are in the community?
Yeah.
But are
Janine, you can come up if you have
to?
anything to add.
We're also, and we did receive the funding and grants for that piece of the work. We're looking to determine a site allocation as well as an operator for the site, and then to prop up a capital campaign.
Okay.
So those are the pieces.
So we're ensuring the sustainability of this. Now, like in Lansing, where I've worked for years, the city market, like it was something similar. It was a huge disaster. It didn't work.
So one of the things that we've been really cognizant about in our processes is to make sure that we are engaging community and getting community feedback and buy-in so that we are addressing the needs of what people want and want to see. A lot of times what has happened is that consultants give a broad picture view, but they really don't engage in the education of the community and get feedback from them, and so they end up chasing their tail trying to figure out what's going to make it sustainable. So we're really doing our due diligence on the front end to make sure that this is a sustainable model.
Yeah, that's my biggest thing, because my patience is growing thin with studies that lead to more questions. If I'm going to approve a study, I want it to lead to an answer. So is this project, can you, with a great deal of certainty, tell this board that it is going to lead to results?
Yes.
You will not need any other study?
No.
All right. That's what I needed to hear. Questions or comments from commissioners? I didn't mean for that to be grilling.
One more thing I would say is that New Venture Advisors, who is our consultant on the front end, who we would like to continue with, they're out of Chicago, but they have a project manager in Grand Rapids, which we like very much, so she could be here on
Great.
site. Our board did hear all of the readout of that, which I do have and would be happy to provide to the commissioners.
Perfect.
It came in November, and obviously this application was in September.
Yeah.
But the board voted unanimously to move forward based on the results of that
Perfect.
initial.
Yeah, and again, I don't mean to be critical, but I've had a lot of positive feedback, but having sat on this board for a number of years, I don't want to be disappointed by another study and then disappoint my
Absolutely.
constituents. So
Absolutely.
thank you for answering that. Questions or comments from commissioners?
On the $100,000, this consultant is going to charge you $100,000?
It's part of that. It's 67.5 for the consultant. Then we're also looking at a satellite aggregator through Sprout. They operate out of Battle Creek, but wanting to develop a satellite model. So that would mean that our farmers could bring in produce, could have an online marketplace, people could order and have it delivered. That's a piece of it. And then the third piece of it is
Well,
developing
hold on a second. Grocery delivery in Hastings?
box like CSA, community supported agriculture. And in the pandemic, Sprout has seen their sales go up by like 600% because of safety, because they can go online, order the things, and it's supporting our local producers.
Now, did I hear someone get up there and say that there was a possibility of a kitchen going in here for COA? Is that part of the study, or?
So it also will be looking at anchor tenants to determine who would be anchor tenants. We see one of those possibilities as being COA's production and distribution of Meals on Wheels. We see a lot of opportunity for cross-pollination so that they could be utilizing farmers market, supplies. We have an incubator space, or envision an incubator space, where people with small food ideas can come in and utilize that space to try out their model, also get some small business education to help them, and then move into the retail hall. And then the long-term goal would be that they then go into our downtowns, right? They have enough capital that they can go out on their own.
Has there been any place looked at for this, or are we talking building new, or?
So there were two considerations. One was the DPS garage, the city-owned.
Cool building.
Yep, across from the Thornapple Plaza. And the other consideration was looking at across the river there by the Royal Coach on the other side of the bridge. So those are the two considerations at this point that we were considering, whether it be a new build or a renovation.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you.
Just a comment, I think this is definitely worthy of our consideration. Keep in mind, Blue Zones, if I remember, has invested approximately $3 million of private funding from community partners throughout this project for a 3-year.
1.4 was
1.4? Okay, I couldn't remember what the number was, but that was all private money that came in from community partners
point.
to help this out. So they haven't asked this board for anything other than some office space, if I remember right, when Blue Zones came in.
That's right, in the very beginning.
So,
We debated just as long on it.
yeah, so $100,000, if we can get the results for our community, would be just amazing to have another, Berry County-centric offering like this to help out with.
Also, of
great idea.
note, our first phase was funded by local philanthropists, businesses.
Yes, it was.
The DDA, all put in money towards that. And we received the Addressing Food and Nutrition grant from Blue Cross Blue Shield, West Michigan Health Endowment Fund, or Michigan Health Endowment Fund, and W.K. Kellogg Foundation for the market analysis piece. So there are lots of pools of funding coming together to make this a reality.
Really does sound transformational. I didn't know of its impact until local farmers started talking to me about it, that this would really create places for small businesses to thrive. It would create a kind of I don't know, it would create another destination for the city of Hastings, too. Commissioner Connor.
Who's the fiduciary on this?
The Community Foundation is the fiduciary for Blue Zones.
I'm sorry, I didn't
Bonnie
see you,
says,
so
correction, fiscal sponsor.
I just want to make sure that there is a distinct difference between fiduciary and fiscal sponsor. So we're a fiscal sponsor.
Right.
They don't have their own 501c3.
Okay, so fiduciary, how does that work with giving the money to,
Because we're a 501c3, so we would.
is that all right? I
Be
mean,
part of that.
do we have an issue there?
I mean, we have to identify who the contracting party is.
So
Okay.
we as the 501c3 would be the contracting party.
Again, these questions would be worked out with the stipulation subject to appropriate contractual approval with the applicant. If there were a deficiency or an issue with the contract, then that would have to be resolved before the funds would be paid.
I understand that, but the question came up in my mind, and
Right.
It's fine.
Or your county treasurer could keep the money and pay the bills.
I guess the best answer at this point is, again, those are the details
Okay.
that we'll have to, for this project or any of these projects to then move forward from this phase will require contracts coming back to you. So,
all right.
as Mark and I begin to dive into the details of, again, who the subrecipients are, who the contracting agencies are, and how we do that, we'll put that together. But the community, I guess what other, community foundation is a thank you, eligible transferee. So
okay.
Certainly, is an eligible.
Wait for the can. It is a good question.
It is a good question.
I got a question.
Who has a question?
Would the Green Street food distribution be moving into your site?
That's a good question. I think yet to be determined, but I think, certainly that would be an opportunity.
I know they do it every Wednesday over here.
Another piece of the operational model was looking at cold storage so that we are able to preserve food and be able to distribute on other days. So that's some of the things that we ran into in our distributions where we needed to get it out to people.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have anywhere to keep it in the county. So.
Anything else? Hearing no further discussion, the question for the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners allocation of up to $100,000 in ARPA funds for the Activate Berry County Community Food Center project in the city of Hastings, subject to appropriate contractual approval with the applicant. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Sorry.
Take a 2-minute break. I'm late.
Without objection, we'll take a 5-minute break. Entertain a motion to recommend to allocate. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners allocation of up to $240,000 in ARPA funds to the Berry County Road Commission for lost revenue replacement, subject to appropriate contractual approval with the applicant.
So moved.
Is there support?
Support, Jackson.
That motion is made by Smelker, supported by Jackson. Discussion. My only question on this one, since we have invested in roads before, this item is a little different than the other ones because it's lost revenue and it actually isn't purchasing a new good. I just want to be assured that there's not an extra $240,000 coming from the infrastructure bill. You may not be able to answer that.
I can't. I can tell you that it is the lost revenue from looking at what the gas tax and the use that generally the Road Commission would have received because their funding does not come through the county. It comes from gas taxes and from the state. They lost over $900,000 in tax from the loss of revenue. But they also had gotten some additional grants. So when we looked at that, we looked at what they had gotten in some additional COVID dollars and then what their lost revenue was and kind of came up with that $240,000. They were the only one of our, I'm sorry, not the only one because the county did as well. The county and the Road Commission were the two that used the ARPA revenue replacement calculator when they did apply, which was one of the things that was requested in the grant application.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Connor?
Well, while we're waiting on the answer, my question is, because originally the Road Commission didn't qualify for ARPA funds. I mean, they didn't get like other governmental entities, they didn't get
Right.
the monies like we
Mhm.
got and townships received, municipalities. But my question is, isn't this work that they would have done their normal work process or programs?
Well, I think we're talking about two different things. There's finishing projects and there's revenue replacement. Yeah, the projects are going to be done. It's going to be over a longer period of time, though. And with roads, we know that with deterioration, it costs more to fix in the long run. So I think the answer is yes, if I can guess. It would have got done, but it would have come at a higher cost.
Maybe, but it's still their work,
Right.
their regular work,
hmm
be it a project or be it plowing snow or whatever.
I think that they're not asking for money to pay for something that has been, what
Correct.
they're asking for is the fact that they still had to provide all the services, but they didn't receive the revenue that they would have received had we not been in shutdown, right? So we're in shutdown mode. There's we're not selling license plates, and we're not purchasing gas at the rate that we did. So their revenue truly was in a declining state, but they still had to provide all the services. So they used the revenue replacement calculator to prove all of those things. And as Lanny said, we looked at their application and made sure that we weren't double dipping, so to speak, right? Like we weren't looking, we made sure that this piece of it was what they were not able to recoup. They ran in the red, basically.
I think that's
So
conceptually a good way of putting it. It's pushing everything back.
Do they have a fund balance?
I'm sure they do. It goes into our surplus funds or our special revenue funds.
They are a separate legal entity.
thought it's
They
put on
have
our books,
And
so.
they have a fund, and they do have a fund balance. I don't know what that is right off the top of my head, but
Brad here?
he is not. He had to leave for a doctor. But they do.
What are the board's wishes?
Mine are that the road commission does a great job. And if the loss of funds because of the shutdown, I think this is well worth it with the 240.
Yeah, if the,
Nowhere near what they lost, but I didn't realize they could get some other grants that they did.
I saw the same thing, almost $1 million, 900-some thousand dollars in lost revenue. So, and Brad Lamberg, the road commission, does a great job. So when I saw the amount that was recommended versus the amount they lost, I think investment in our roads is an investment in the entire county, so.
I'm not saying any of that, but if they weren't considered qualified once, what changed?
Congress, that stack of 800 pages.
They've always qualified, because this is a fund revenue. This is a revenue replacement and loss of revenue. This isn't about a road project.
I understand that.
Right, but so your point basically is they were not qualified on their own to receive ARPA funding in their own right.
I see, okay.
That's what
So it's only-
okay.
It's only through the county's ability to have a category of revenue loss and then to be able to transfer to a subrecipient for the subrecipient's use of those funds for government services.
Is that because they make up their part of the budget that we pass? Is that why they weren't eligible on their own?
If I may, I think you got to think of the non-traditional setup that Michigan's clunky county government system is. We have an independent road commission and the independently elected drain commissioner, the county clerk, a register of deeds. A lot of counties just have a road department in other places.
Yeah, I just wondered if they had something.
Yeah, I mean, I can't
Sorry,
say,
Ben.
look
No, no
at
problem.
this section of the law and it explains it, but generally, special purpose entities, authorities and things like that were not included. It was mainly states, tribal governments, and both counties and then local units of government.
That answers. Thank you. That makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm not offended.
The only other comment I'd make is you asked about the Federal Infrastructure
Mhm.
Act. I had a brief conversation with Brad. He'd like to come in and talk to the board at some point about that. I can't tell you the amount of money, but effectively the concern he has and he'd like to share with the board at some point is it's being touted under the Federal Infrastructure Act that this is something effectively new. When it's my understanding through him that it's really a reauthorization of what's existing.
Oh.
There are some additional funds there, but will be significantly watered down amongst.
So
all
it's
of
just
the
overhyped in DC?
Effectively, it is, and it is not going to provide the significant revenue that's effectively being presented in Washington.
Okay.
It's a reauthorization, so I don't.
And I guess the other thing I'd add is that it's my understanding too that they will, as commonplace in the federal government, unlike ARPA, they're going to say, we've got this $1 billion that we're going to allocate to road agencies like the Road Commission for this specific purpose, as opposed to potentially the Road Commission being able to say, well, we had our loss of revenue, we've had to continue our operations, so we're using this money to take care of our continued operations. So one is very, we expect in the infrastructure bill that's going to be very targeted as to what those funds can be used for by an entity like the Road Commission.
Any further discussion?
I'm going to vote no today, but I'm going to get some questions answered in the next week. And when I get more information, I probably will change my vote next week.
Okay.
But today I'm going to vote no, because I still got questions.
Understand. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
I'm not opposed to having good roads in the county.
No, you're not offending us. We understand, and I'm in the same spot, I think, on the next one. At this, hearing no further discussion, the question, is there further questions, discussion? Hearing no further discussion, the question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners allocation of up to $240,000 in ARPA funds to the Berry County Road Commission for lost revenue replacement, subject to appropriate contractual approval with the applicant. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion carries with the noted nay vote. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend allocation of up to $14,000 in ARPA funds for sewer and broadband studies in the Algonquin Lake area, subject to appropriate contractual approval with the applicant.
I'll make that motion.
Is there support?
I'll support.
Motion is made by Gibson, supported by Jackson. Discussion. My hesitation on this one is that I don't know if a broadband $14,000 for a broadband study would net the results that the residents are looking for.
It's not just broadband. So this study started with sewer, and it's really about protecting the water quality of Algonquin Lake. And a suggestion was made to the group to add a component when you're digging it to put in the fiber to reduce the cost of broadband implementation in the future.
So it's really a sewer plan with the
With an added benefit.
with the planning for putting in fiber. Now, how does this appropriation accommodate this fiber? Have we talked to the residents or the companies?
Is strictly for coming up with the estimate for the sewer. I've had a discussion with a company over by Detroit, and
Okay.
I've also had a discussion with MEI. Is that if we make the ditch big enough,
Mm-hmm.
can we get broadband in there? And I've got two divergent opinions there. The answer is yes in both cases. But the people from the
eastern part of the state, I think you have to move certain things certain ways.
I see.
While you're thinking about it. The
Got it.
the MEI approach is to, you can put it, as long as there's conduit in there, they can do it.
Really? So I guess when I hear broadband study, I think of they're surveying the need for faster internet. And 10 out of 10 people say, yeah. So this is really a fiber installation study.
Fiber installation.
Okay. That makes me feel better.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. This is why we're asking questions. Further discussion.
I think.
Catherine first.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I didn't see you, sorry.
I'm interested in Rutland Township's participation in this, and certainly you've laid out that there's a big percentage of residents that live all along Algonquin Lake, and the need there, I think, is evident. Why isn't Rutland Township helping?
Rutland is, as I said, I believe earlier today, they've given us a letter of support. They will be the fiduciary for this. We will end up, we the residents that are involved in this, will end up, once we get the study completed, we will then have a knowledge of what it will cost for the sewer itself. And then we'll be looking at getting landowner approval for that implementation. In the meantime, hopefully we'll have a much better handle on the cost, but also know where availability of funds are for the future. So we'll be back, perhaps in the second round, with funds, but there are other funds that we've got room in that are available in other areas where we try to find funding for. So that's where it stands.
I think that's your district. And what are your thoughts, John? This worthy project?
Yeah. Has there been a survey done of the residents there now and whether they're, majority of them are for or against?
For or against paying more for internet?
Paying more for sewer.
Paying more for sewer.
There has not been. I can tell you that over the last 10, 12 years that I've been there, the complexity of the lake has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is there used to be a lot of small houses, and now there are bigger houses where those small houses were. I think it's much more receptive now than in 2010. They actually tried to have a discussion, a public discussion at the Alka Lodge. And this was just before my wife and I bought our house. And it turned into a debacle because it got into shouting matches and what have you. So as we're looking at this, we're looking at it entirely differently. We've got the lake broken up into like 15, I believe it's 15 sections, which are the little developments that were established all the way around the lake. And it's on, I didn't bring it with me, but I've
That's
got it on
great.
the map.
That,
So
you, sir, have done something that really not a lot of governments have taken on. So thank you for your diligence on this.
Well, you're entirely welcome. I just hope it comes
Am I
to
right?
fruition.
Yeah, we did the exact thing at Long Lake in '05. Sewer was put in '07. They put fiber in conjunction with the sewer, so now parts of the lake have got MEI fiber in there. So, but it also, because of that, it not only enabled the lake to have it, but there are places around the lake that are also connected to fiber as well. So it's a spider web effect. When you can do one area, it potentially benefits a larger segment of Rutland Township as well.
And I can make one other statement.
Yes, please.
We met with the city, and there is capacity for the sewer within the city, so.
And it's done its homework.
Yeah.
Thank you for checking on that. Discussion, further discussion?
The question was kind of commingled in all of
Yeah.
that conversation.
My question has been answered. My concerns have been alleviated. There being no further discussion, the question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners allocation of up to $14,000 in ARPA funds for sewer and broadband studies in the Algonquin Lake area, subject to appropriate contractual approval with the applicant. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We've reached unlimited public comment. Any individual wishing to address the board may do so for up to 3 minutes.
I feel like I might be a day late and a dollar short, but I should have said something at the beginning of the meeting. On behalf of my husband, I'm standing up here requesting that you do consider at least one evening meeting. He has a job that he can't attend any meetings in the during the day, and he would like to be more involved in local government, and I think that there are others that feel the same way too. I would just like to say, in regards to that really what you do takes a lot of guts, and I appreciate that you have decided to put yourself in this position. And when it comes to security, I have to tell you that I was at the Barry Eaton County Health Department meeting that you held over at the center. I can't think of the correct name, but anyway, it was heated, but it was peaceful, and there was a sheriff presence, and I felt safe because of that. And I think that if you were to hold a meeting in a different location, I don't feel like that's something that you need to fear. I guess I would be more fearful for the fact that all of your home addresses are listed on the internet and in the little booklet that you provided. So I also want to say that I'm really disappointed in the banner stating that individuals were attacking commissioners every week during public comment. We should welcome debate and not try to squelch the voice of the public, even if it is heated. And lastly, just a little bit of education you might not know, but my grandfather, many, many years ago, gave the railroad a piece of property that started from McEwen Road behind Thornapple Manor all the way to the road that ends on Nashville Road.
There's no objection. I'd like to ask a question. What's your grandfather's name?
My grandfather is Loyal Lowell.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
And with the agreement that when the railroad deceased, that he would be able to buy that land back for $1. Well, the railroad ceased. However, they did sneakily put fiber optics under that section, which does not allow us to do anything in that area because of that. And not only that, but the county forced my grandmother to sell that little piece of property behind Thornapple Manor to McEwen Road. Now, with in mind that we still own the majority of that trail, but I looked on the internet and saw that there's a possibility of paving that little section. And my question is, why? There's no connectivity to a trail because that is our property. That's my family property. So I guess I'm a little disappointed in that. I just wanted to speak that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Can we hear her name?
We'll ask her. Is there further public comment?
Ted DeVries, Prairieville Township, and I noticed on the agenda or that you printed up here, I think you missed a line item. Number 9 said talking about projects that were not approved.
We moved right into projects for consideration.
Okay, I just was looking at what you had up there.
Thank you. Is there,
What is he talking about?
we had up there projects not funded.
Oh, there.
Slide.
It was right underneath the last project.
Hi, Charles Hertzler, Hastings City. Thank you for letting me speak during this I don't know what you want to call it, a discussion. And allow me to ask a couple questions there and stuff. I appreciate that. And I'm really here to say that, I've always been a vocal person. Even in elementary school, the teachers would tell me to shut up. I was too loud, and I was giving them a lot of grief. I've always been a kind of a loud person, and if I get passionate about something, I really kind of get carried away. I'm sorry for that, but I can't say forgive me because I am who I am. Okay? I apologize if I hurt anybody's feelings. I do want to say that I did not appreciate the article that the Banner put out saying that I'm up here yelling at you guys and being a maniac and everything else, when all I'm doing is up here trying to share my concerns in a passionate way, okay? So I think it would have been better for the Banner to say what it is I complain about, or I discuss about, or what I yell about. Let's be a little bit productive about this. I don't come in here like a raving maniac. I don't think. I try to have legitimate concerns and prospects and stuff, but the way they wrote me up in the paper, I'm a lunatic. And I don't appreciate that. I think the Banner needs to be more trustworthy and honest with what they print. And I would like to think that maybe if you guys saw that you would hold them a little bit more accountable too. All right? I don't see them ever saying too many bad things about you guys. And, I even like that little write-up they just did in the reminder about Ben for all the I did not realize he's been on the board since 2011 and stuff and served all these years and the things he's been involved with. And I learned a lot of that through the reminder and stuff. So I guess, why can't they treat the citizens the same way they do you guys? Okay, so we get passionate, we get a little loud, we get a little carried away, but print about what we're discussing. Say, this is what he said. Now, once they mentioned about the thing when I said about what have we done about the jail or anything else, I'm just a raving lunatic, And so, hopefully, we can get along a little bit better. Maybe you got a little bit of understanding about me and who I am. I'm loud. I'm sorry. But, even when I'm not at these meetings, some of you know that I can get a little carried away. I can get a little carried away up there at the diner and stuff. So, I thank you.
Thank you. Is there further public comment? Stuck it out.
Yeah, long one today, guys. Adam Heikkila, local business owner, once again. I'm going to say a lot of the same things, simply because, these funds, these funds, all this that we see going on is really the socialization of our nation, the lack of the voice of a local community. I just don't know what to say. We come here every week and we're broken records. The room was packed here today, but it wasn't packed. It was only packed with people that really wanted money. They wanted to get some money from you guys so that their projects could be completed, because for whatever reason, they haven't been able to plan and to get their projects completed other than this magic money from this, that's been created. This debt, this new debt now that's been created for all of our grandkids and great-grandkids. Groups like Sprout and Battle Creek, that is a socialist group. Sprout and Battle Creek was started and it only is around because of the Kellogg Foundation. They received upwards of $2 million from the Kellogg Foundation. It's the only reason they're there. They don't make any money. So when you are going to do this $70,000 to a consultant and looking to do something similar to Sprout, make sure that you're planning on funding that group, because that's typically what you're going to need that. Figure out, make sure that someone like Kellogg or one of the foundations is going to be funding that group, because you're going to need it. They're not going to make money doing what they're doing. I just don't know what to say anymore. You guys don't really listen, and it's evident. It's sad, because you guys have so many. You don't have a very big county here. It's 60,000 residents or something, and you guys have had a huge amount of people coming regularly, voicing concerns, voicing things that they want to see done or done different. But The only ones that you end up listening to are the ones that come here that are on the boards, that are elected officials that can't get their projects done in any way because they're inept, they're incompetent, many of them. And you all just continue the same system. We don't have accountability anymore. You as a board, how do we hold you accountable? You guys don't even listen to the people that come here and tell you guys. So we'll continue to keep coming. I'm going to keep coming just because I've dedicated myself to this now, so I'm going to continue to do it. And I like to see things through. I like to see the changes happen. So, yeah. Thanks for the long meeting, I guess.
Thank you for your comments. Is there further public comment? Seeing no further public comment and without objection, the committee will now adjourn. The committee is adjourned.